Happy Friday. Happy Friday. I'm in a silly mood, y'all. Sorry. And I am sober. Isn't that awesome? I could be this silly and nothing with no stimulants, nothing in my system. Hi, you guys. Happy Friday. We're back for another episode of A Chic Critique. Let's introduce our panelists for tonight. We have Mistaken, the AP, Enas. Do not call her Inez. Her name is Enas. And Harrison. My name is Shan Monet, and this is A Chic Critique.
It's Enas, not to be confused with Inez.
Inez. Right. So how is everybody doing? I know I've had some weekends off, y'all. Let me just tell y'all, when you are dating, people be wanting your Fridays. So I have to choose between y'all. You know, and sometimes y'all lose. So I love you though. I'm gonna try to be consistent. So today we are talking about high earning women getting the short end of the stick. Maybe that's where that attitude comes from. We're gonna dig a little deeper, but a little bit later, right? So y'all ain't no small talk. Y'all just not gonna talk today. I'm gonna just get straight to
I was about to say, I say you officially off the market. You out here in the?
Oh no, I'm not at the market.
Oh, okay.
Slow down, brother.
Just want to get the logistics. You know what I'm saying? Just want to make sure,
Infant steps, okay. Look, no, but I realized that, I have to go out and actually, I said, I'm not a dater. I hate dating. You know how people are like, oh, I want to go get to a restaurant. I hate it. I don't like meeting new people. I don't like getting fancy just to see that I don't like you. Like, I don't want you to go in your pocket and spend $300 on me. Look, we can do a pass by and I don't like I think the worst thing you can do is waste your time and waste somebody else's time. Time is so valuable to me. So with that being said, the time it takes for me to get downtown, the energy, all that stuff, I take all of that into consideration. But that's probably why I'm single. So I try to put myself out there and not be so closed off. And I'm actually opening myself up to going on dates, even though I hate dating. And I have a strategy. So if I just order tea, that means I don't like you. Because I wouldn't want you to spend money on me. I may get a shot. Just to make this conversation better. But I don't.
Can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
So, have you ever tried like front loading as far as like spending more time?
Sorry, I didn't feel. You remember like months ago when I was in my dining room and my dining room glass broke on the thing when we were talking? I think oh my God, that was an expensive piece too. But anyway, something similar just happened, but it didn't break. Go ahead, I'm listening. I'm sorry, Harrison.
It's got to be a full moon. But
it's gotta be.
You ever thought about like spending more time outside of dating? Like kind of building like the chemistry before seeing where things are before you decide to go out on a date. Have you tried doing that before?
Well, so what you mean talking on the phone?
Yeah, like talking on the phone, video chat, like spend more time away because, in that little shaky period between texting and video calling, people disappear all the time. So you can really have minimum investment. But if you can make it through those small periods of interactions and then you meet up, the chances of when it's time to spend money, nobody feels like they're really wasting their time because you're already invested a lot more time on the front end before you got to a date.
So what I have noticed, especially when it comes to just from observation, because this is what I spend my time doing sometimes. When people take a long time to get the initial date in, and the date, when I say that's why I am an advocate for coffee dates. It is inexpensive. You can have great conversation over coffee. You're not all dolled up. You get to really see how a person looks without them being too fancy. And like I said, it's inexpensive. So I personally believe that you have to have that one-on-one interaction. What online dating has done to us has taken out the organic part of meeting someone. So before online dating, you saw the person. They had to come up to you and say hi. You had a conversation. And so when you're doing things without that conversation, it gives me more like pen pal. And that doesn't work for everybody. Some people are great at like that long distance stuff, but for the most part, most people are not. We got to put that organic piece back in. And that's where the interaction, like, hey, is there an attraction there? Because we can sit there and talk all day on the phone and you can waste your time, because if she gets in front of you and she's not, if there's no attraction, it's wasted time.
I have a better question. Uh, what men are doing that, Harrison? What are you talking about?
What? Like
Yeah,
getting
let me get to
spending
know
more
you
time?
via. Yeah, let me get to know you via chatting and calling. What? No, I want to lay
Well,
my eyes on you, and I can make a decision if I want to talk to you on the phone. What are we like? Men do that? I mean, you ladies would know better than, I guess, better than me, but I'm sure in the hell not going to do that. So, are you guys men do that?
Yeah, men do that. And if there's like any sort of catfishing going on, whether it's height fishing, hat fishing, beard fishing, whatever, any sort of fishing going on, they'll tend to try to delay the first date just to try to build up that chemistry so that like you already like them by the time you're on the date. So much like Shan, I think it's important to go on that first date sooner rather than later, just so you can get a good feel for the person, because the chemistry on the phone doesn't always match the chemistry in person. So even though you're highly invested, it feels worse to then meet in person and realize it's not the same energy. So I'm with Shan, like get it done sooner rather than later, so that when you are investing, you understand that this is something that you mutually want to invest in.
Yeah, that like I would. I'm not gonna really spend a ridiculous amount of time on someone I haven't really met physically. I would never do that. That doesn't even make sense to me. And
It's
I'm
so
sorry if
funny.
I'm talking in a low tone and kind of soft. Today was day one for me getting back into coaching, so I'm just kind of woo
You know what's
sawing it.
so it's so crazy to me. Like people don't know that's a passion of mine. I observe people, especially when it comes to online dating. It's so intriguing to me because I am on dating apps, and sometimes I look at him like, oh my god, he needs to change that picture. I kind of just want to, counsel him through this process. Like this is not a good profile. Like I think you should try this because men are so close to women can get it. We know angles. But real men don't really do selfies. They're like, so they need a little help. They don't know that you probably shouldn't post if you've got attractive friends and you're the unattractive one, you probably shouldn't post them at all. You like get rid of the friends, just post you. So
Jesus.
it's so many things that men do wrong on dating apps, and I just be wanting to reach out and help them, with
I
That's
that.
mean, you
terrible.
can do that. Like,
I
you could
really
literally
do
swipe
want
on
to
them,
do
right?
it,
You could be like swipe and say a match, right? Because more than likely, women match more on apps
but
than
then
guys do,
they'll get
right?
like,
I
oh,
would
they don't match in
I
them because
would
I
I
want
would
to date
not I would
them.
not recommend a woman do that. If they're not
Me either, 'cause
if they're not really like into what they see, don't do that. You don't know what kind of dude that you're
I
gonna
mean,
run into.
but even when women do be interested, it don't take them long to get off. So it's like it don't really matter whether they're not interested or
oh,
not. They can swipe all day and be like, "Oh, I like him. I like him." He said one thing wrong. That's the end of that.
so here's the thing, right? Because like this is like the male privilege perspective when it comes to online dating. I don't think y'all understand how nasty some of these guys get. Even if you are genuinely trying to help, they will cuss you out and then block you. They will say really terrible things. Or some guys, and Shan, I know this is probably happening to you too, will track your social media down just to continue to berate you. So like I don't recommend it because some of the reactions that you get are so unnecessary. So it's just best to kind of steer clear of some of those situations.
And what's so funny is I learned because I was looking like this. Y'all, when I tell you it's my passion, it's my passion. We did an episode and it was called "The Most Desire and the Least Desire," and most of it came from dating app stats data, right?
Mhm.
And what I've noticed is some of your it's kind of incorrect information. Let me tell you why. What I've noticed is the men who can get a lot of women organically aren't on dating apps. They just go out and they get women, you know. And the same thing for women. If they're social and they're getting guys, I mean, it would have to be somebody like me. I don't go out much. They're social and they get guys. They probably don't even need a dating app. Okay. So what happens is black men were the least desirable, but only in front of Asian men. Okay. And the reason that is because the least desirable ones are the ones on
Yeah.
the dating apps.
Mhm.
Because the ones who are desirable don't need a dating app. They just go out and they get women. The
Mhm.
same thing goes true with the women. What I find is on dating apps, it's mostly white men who are successful white men. So obviously they're going to get more swipes. I don't see the women's side, but I've been told by black men it's not a lot of black women that they go for. So it makes sense that the swipes will be less if it's the women that you don't necessarily go for. I get that a lot. I ask questions. I'm like, hey, and they're like, yeah, we don't get, like, I was surprised to see you. And I was like, well, here I am. We don't actually go, I don't go on a date with all these people, but I enjoy the conversation. I like to get to know people's thoughts and all of that kind of stuff as it relates to dating apps. Again, it's a great thing if if you are busy, you work a lot, so you don't get to interact with a lot of people, the opposite sex. For me, I'm a teacher, so it's all women. So I don't see men a lot. So it works well for me. And plus I'm not I go out on the weekends maybe once a month, except in the summertime.
I feel like if you're busy, I feel like dating apps are actually the most ineffective because it's hard to build a genuine connection with a person when you're always on the go. Like if I'm over in this meeting, I got this, and then you see a bunch of people that you're interested. These people that are interested in you, you typically like they want to get time with you, just like you said, they want to meet up, but it's not going to be easy for you to meet up if you got a bunch of stuff to do. So to me, like the only real way that you consistently find better matches is if you're out in person and you just meet somebody at a job or you just walking around and you see somebody. And either way, you're taking a risk online or in person. So, you know.
Do you think that just because I'm not about that life, I have no idea what it's like to date online. I'm hearing y'all, I'm glad. But do you think that you get a better feel like for the person when you're face to face? Because it seemed like you can.
There's chemistry face to face.
Right.
It's too impersonal. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It feels like to me that you can be a bigger pretender behind, like, I'm saying computer, but phone or whatever you use to do the whole dating thing. Like it because I see it on here, like, how they say, oh, you're a bully on a keyboard, but in real life you're not like that. You wouldn't act like that in real life. So I'm kind of thinking that it's maybe easier to pretend to be who you are in person versus who you try to be when you're, online. Is that the case or not?
I think both of them have their drawbacks because if you meet in person, it's easy for you to perform in that short amount of time and then back off. Oftentimes, like it's easy to lie to yourself when you meet somebody in person. You'd be like, oh, this person looks gorgeous, right? But then you start talking to them and you should be like, she's kind of crazy. She don't really think too well. She don't really speak well or something like that. So whether you meet them in person or you meet them online and you talking to them, like you're genuine people, they're going to be themselves in person and offline. But I think you learn a lot about a person from a distance online because like some people are bold online. they're very reserved in person most of the time, unless they get comfortable. Once they start getting comfortable, then that's when you start seeing the true self, because you know just as well as me, no matter if you meet them online, you meet them in person, people are putting up a front to some degree because they want to see what's going on. They see what kind of chemistry. They want to see how this person think, how he move. Is he a gentleman, or does she know how to be respectable and humble or something like that? So I would say, like, I think that in person, it feels great. It feels better in person than it does online. But I think you learn a little bit more online because people, they're a little bit more bold online than they are in person.
I vehemently disagree with you.
That's fine.
The way a person shows up is the way a person shows up. Yeah, they can lie, but typically, how long can you keep the lie up? How many lies do you got to make to cover up the old lies? And then in person, how long are you going to really be able to keep the lie before somebody finds out? You can keep a lie online as long as you can. I mean, shit, like as long as you choose to. So I mean, I don't think I think that the face to face interaction is really the most telling of all interactions. And if you can't, like, for example, I'll use me as an example. Here online, I think that I talk a little bit differently than I do when in real life. Like right here, you hear the pauses, and my brain is saying, "Hey, say this," but then it's like, that I can't really say that. So I can pretend to be whom I want to be online. When you show up in person, who you are is kind of who you are. Yeah, again, people lie, but you got to keep a lie going. And if there's a second date and a third date, then you got to say, "Oh shit, what did I say the first time?" Because it has to match the second time and the third time. It's a little bit different online, and I think you can wear whatever mask you want online. I really do, and you can't really do that in person. I just think that you get, and then the probing questions that you can ask, and when you see the look away and the look up and the eyes don't lie. Your eyes will tell on you.
I agree, but I think that, like, you can do both in person. Like, that's the reason why those girls got bamboozled. The what's that dude? That guy that was playing these women, getting millions of dollars from these women.
Yeah.
Like, listen, anybody that's not genuine, that's not legit, people know how to play the game. There's women that know how to get men moving, and there's men that knows how to get women moving. So some things are a skill set. And no matter if you meet them on person or you meet them online, a non-genuine person that doesn't have integrity or character, they can fake the funk for as long as they're getting what they need from that interaction. So I mean,
So
it don't really matter.
I guess the sucker's born every day. I don't like. I really don't like. It's all about asking the right questions, like moving the conversation the way you really need to move the conversation to find out who a person really is. And I'm not talking about the narcissist people and the sociopathic people. I'm talking about regular everyday people. When you're trying to meet them, and you can be that sociopath and that narcissist online. In person, you're going to change the way you speak, you're going to change the way you move. You can be that rude, angry person online. You can be that dickhead online. And I've met and I've seen those people that are dickheads online that aren't, they are who they say they are, kind of. Because when you meet them in person, they're not the same person that you see online, which is why I firmly believe that true social interaction face to face is how is who a person truly is.
so you're both right. And I know that that's kind of a strange answer, but in terms of like the online interactions, anybody can pretend to be whoever that they want, right? The issue is that you don't have a whole lot of proof to validate whether or not they're telling the truth. So you're kind of going in a little bit blind in that situation. When it comes to like in-person interactions, people can still fake the funk. Um, but you get a little bit more validity in what it is that you're seeing. You get to see how they interact with other people versus how they interact with you, right? In the case of the Tinder swindler, I think if we're honest, because that's not the only person that's happened to. Women do it too. You're absolutely right. There's a level of like people wanting to lie to themselves for the sake of liking you, right? So it's not that the truth isn't in front of them. It's not that they don't see what's going on, is that they're choosing to believe the BS because it reinforces the fact that they already like you, right? And I think that's where you get a little bit more say so from the in-person interactions, is that you do have that choice to believe the person or not, regardless of the evidence that's being shown to you.
Yeah, that sounds like the comedian effect. A comedian might not necessarily be as funny, or you might not be laughing as much, but if he's a likable comedian, you're not really that upset that he's not as making you go ha 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 ha. If you're likable, people will sometimes give you more rope, whether you're a comedian or whether you're on a date. But you know I agree with you. I agree that, listen, like, cats be out here. They be lying. They be faking the funk. And I do like a genuine interaction in person because you can play out the environment. You can see certain mannerisms, certain tells, how do they respond in like random situations that don't go well. You can learn a lot about a person in person. I just personally, just from experience, that genuine people, whether they're online or they're in person, you know, people be lying.
So catfishing, right? That's just basically you trying to set somebody up, right? Where you really don't have an intent. Is it that you really do like them, but you don't think the other person would like you, so you pretend to be somebody else? Or is it more along the lines of you pretend to be somebody else because you're not really interested in a person?
So there's varying degrees of catfishing, right?
Mhm.
There's like the hat fishing, the guy who doesn't have any pictures without a hat on, so you have no idea what his hairline looks like. There's height fishing, the guys that tell you that they're 5'11", but they're 5'9" once you meet them in person, right? Women do it too, right? Like there's weight fishing where, it's a one particular angle and it's only from like the chest up in all of her pictures, or all of her pictures are heavily filtered, so you don't really know what she looks like. It's not always as extreme as like pretending to be a whole different person. Sometimes it's as minimal as just like hiding one aspect that isn't considered socially desirable, right? And then there's everything in between.
Mm.
So it gets a little bit tricky where sometimes people feel ashamed about something, or they feel like that's the thing that's going to stop them from meeting their person. And if they can build that on with you, they're hoping that you'll overlook it. Or, it's full on catfishing and like they just don't feel like you would like them if you saw what they actually look like.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, there's some trolls out there too. Like they'll play with people and get, all the fun out of it and then ghost you out of nowhere. But
Catfish.
yeah, but I think it's interesting because I had this funny story. So when I was younger, me and my boy, he went to go meet this girl that he met on Facebook. And he was like, "Oh, this girl looks great," and she took these great pictures from this angle. She always had makeup on, this, that, and the third. Let me tell you something. He didn't have a car at the time, so I took him over to meet the girl, and she walked over through the parking lot. And let me tell you something. He was like, "Bro, is that her?" Now, mind you, she's still walking. She can see us, and I can see her. Well, we were locking eyes at this point, and he's like, "Bro, drive off." I said, "Bro," I said, "We can see her." Like, bro, what do you mean? You got to see this through, my boy. You know what I'm saying? You can see her. She was like, she said, "Bro, she do not look. This not what I
Shit,
saw
this
online."
ain't Janet Jackson.
Bro, when I tell you, and then she opens the door. She was there. I was like, "Hey," he was like, "Hey, man." When I tell you, I was just like this.
Can
Go ahead.
can you only catfish when you're online dating, or can you catfish in person?
Yeah, you can always catfish everywhere. Like he said, like Enon said, if you only wearing a hat when you see him, he probably ain't got no hair, right? Or she always wearing weave or makeup or heels. You know what I'm saying? Like people know sometimes learn their weaknesses, right? And so they'll do what they can to cover those weaknesses so that they can secure the deal, right? My problem is I just don't be caring. I make sure that the certain things is make sure we smell good, make sure the beer is taken care of, and all this other stuff. But for the most part, listen, you're gonna get a genuine HD. If you think I'm a butthole, I mean, it is what it is. You think I'm a nice guy, I don't care. Like, the simple fact of the matter is I don't change who I am no matter where I'm at. So you just gonna learn real quick that you're gonna like it or you're not.
So do you think that catfishing only goes by appearance? Do you think people can catfish you by just the things they tell? For example, he can play like he's got all this money in the world. Catfish. Or
I
he
mean,
can play like, oh, I want this relationship, but he just wants to sex with you. Gotcha. It's like, so are there like different levels of the catfish, or is it just physical?
No, it's definitely people definitely catfish personalities. Like sometimes people seem like really sweet and really caring, like they're really good people. And, you get them in the right circumstance or the right conversation, and things start to seep through, and you're like, I don't know about all those things you said, right? So like, it's definitely a personality thing too, right? Because like, what's that thing? In the first 6 months, you usually have the representative. So it's personality just as much as it is looks. And I guess like money goes with personality, because for a lot of people, money changes their personality, whether they have an excess or a lack of. So no, I think people catfish their personalities too. I think it's another word for that. I'm not sure, but we'll go with catfishing.
Like,
it's
you
called
mean in
fronting.
person?
Manipulating. Listen, so let me
called
ask you a
fronting.
question. Oh, go ahead, Miss Bacon. Did you have something to add?
No, I was asking for clarification with Inaz. Did she mean is another word for like catfishing in person versus online?
Well, just your
No,
personality
like,
opposed to your body.
yeah.
Your physical.
Okay.
Or people play like they're totally different people when it comes to these catfish. Like, have you ever seen that TV show? They like don't even be like, some people can manipulate and make themselves look better, but these people be actually taking other people's photos off of their pages and putting it on their pages, just because they want companionship in the form, even if it's just over the phone, they just want companionship. And it's like a real thing.
Y'all ever watch that show, The Circle?
No.
So it's like this reality TV show, but they all interact with each other only online. And some of them are catfish, and so they try to like suss out who's the catfish and who's a genuine person. If you want to understand the dynamic of like the looks versus like the personality and all the different ways people catfish,
That show is good.
watch the show. You'll have a deeper understanding of like how crazy catfishing can be.
That's
It's the main reason why I like to meet people in person, and it's nothing more satisfying when a person shows up to be who they say they are. And for example, you guys know last week I went to Chicago, met up with Marcus. He is who he is on the show. It's the same dude.
You met Marky Mark.
I did. It is literally the same dude, like same cool ass dude. And the without going, too much into the experience, shout out Chicago. Got to see somebody get their car stolen.
Down.
But
It's going down.
like we went to several different parts of the city. Not only like was it like parts of the city where a person might likely feel unsafe. No, everything was cool, and not only that, everybody knew him. It was weird. I was like, you know what? This dude is who this dude says he is. And met up with went to Detroit first. Shout out to Chelsea Live Line. Met up with her. She was who she says she is. And there's nothing more rewarding when personally when you meet a person in person, you're like, you know what? You are who you say you are. And I don't think that you can get those genuine you really know until you meet a person in person. You don't really know. And the whole catfish thing. We did a show a while back, and I decided that I'd look up some of those videos on YouTube. People are nuts. People are absolutely nuts. This one chick catfished her old chick to get back at her old chick just to see her old chick. It was the craziest thing. So they set up the catfish people, but she was the one that was the actual catfish of one of her exes. I was like, this bitch is, pardon my language, this lady is crazy. Man, man, I will never. I'll never. Not online. No, I don't. That online dating is for the birds. I'll pass.
I feel you, bro. I feel you.
Do you think people can build genuine like relationship or feelings just online without ever meeting the person in person? Like if y'all are talking about catfishing, a lot of times they're not seeing the person like even on like the the FaceTime, or they're literally the only thing that they saw was a picture, and then they'll have conversations. So you think people really develop like feelings just from that without actually having any true interaction?
Watching that show, it appears so to me. When you invest, because you truly invest yourself into this person that you haven't met, but it feels like you make a genuine connection. Like you have a genuine partnership, a genuine friendship, a genuine relationship when you're texting all the time. You basically, that's what it is. You're texting all the time
AP,
because they,
is it just me? I hear a little static in your do y'all hear that too, or is it just
I did too, but I wasn't sure if it was me or not.
no, it could be me. I don't know. Give me 1 second.
no? But we can hear you now. So go ahead with your thought. We can hear you. It's just a little. I just wanted to go ahead and speak. Let me see if I hear it.
Yo, check, mic check 1 2, mic check 2 3. In the place to be. I was about to say my real name in these YouTube streets, but I'm not going
Tell
to.
y'all my real name.
Well, you're
Okay, well, go ahead,
you're
AP.
formerly Shantae.
Thank you, AP. I'm Chamonix. Okay.
I said formerly. You know, like the artist formerly known as Prince.
That was so last year.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, but you be snitching on yourself. You know what I'm saying? Every time you put your name up there, and I
I
just be like,
know.
okay.
I messed up real bad.
But I wanted to
Okay.
also answer Mistaken's question. So, like, over the pandemic, when like the whole world was locked down, like that didn't really stop people from forming new connections and new relationships, right? And so I think that's really when we saw how people were able to build relationships without having the option to meet in person. Because even though it isn't long distance, a lot of people were still trying to be safe, right? So I think as long as you put in time and effort and energy into somebody and it's reciprocated, I think there's room for relationships to grow, even if that in-person interaction isn't there, right? The devastating part is if one person or both people are faking it, is that it's not going to last. But if both people are genuine, then I think that could potentially be a really dope way to start off a relationship, even if the possibility of meeting in person isn't there.
I do think it's really interesting that during the pandemic they were adding certain features to the video apps, the video viewing apps, that for people for autism, right? Because they're so used to picking up, like what AP is saying, that genuine face-to-face interaction tells a lot. But for some reason it was hard for some people with autism to be able to make out certain mannerisms over digital interfaces. So because of that, they actually made that when a person made a face that was close to an emoji, the emoji would come up on a screen so that the person can recognize and interact and know that this person is doing something. Because us some of us that are on the spectrum, right, we've learned how to pick up cues that even though you don't look sad, we know that there might be something up, right? But for people that have an issue with understanding social cues and interactions that are different from what you say versus what it is that you're showing, they made some changes to the app where it made it more visual so that you can see and understand, even though that wasn't really what you were trying to convey to some degree.
See, that's the example of technology being used for the right reasons. I love that. That's
I
cool.
thought it was dope also.
Yeah.
It went over my head. I'm sorry. It's just, I'm having
Hey Shan, you is your son there today?
I'm having a blonde moment right now. I just like zoned out. It was like, it's so crazy. But I'm sure it was something you said that was great. I'll have to rewind it and go back to it. My apologies. Okay, so y'all, it is one of those nights. Anyhow, so we talked about the catfish, and so I have a few videos that do you guys, anybody else wanted to bring up something for the catfish before we moved on to the next subject?
Mm-mm.
Everybody said their part. All right, cool beans. So we have a video, and y'all know I never have the videos just ready to be pulled up. So unprofessional. Got to do better.
That's just a Friday night chat.
You know. Let's see which one of these goes first.
Got to be
The
better.
longer you wait for the future you want, the less time you have to spend in it. And that, for me, is exactly what it is. So you waiting to experience this amazing future with the gifts that you've been given to share, the longer you wait, the less time you have when you actually get to that. And so I think for all of us, let's be about that business, that sense of urgency, of getting to that moment of joy, of living, so that we can actually live there longer.
Yeah.
This came across my my Instagram, and I just thought I just snuck it in there. It has nothing to do with the topic, but sometimes we waste a lot of time, and it's good time because we have fun times, we bring out memories, because I've had some great times. But do you think that it's wasted? It's so funny. But do you think it's wasted time? So, for example, if you're with a woman, or if you are dating and you're like, okay, I just want to be a free spirit, isn't that wasted time from the person you're supposed to be with? Like you take it for granted, so to speak. Does that make sense?
No.
Do I need to?
No, I understand. Yeah, I understand. But so somebody said something to me a long time ago, and it's not like a blanket statement. It doesn't apply to everything in certain scenarios. So I want to add that caveat before I share it. But they said, like, certain moments that you take away are just a moment in the scale of like forever, right? So if you're spending forever with somebody, those moments that you're taking away, or those moments where you're doing your own thing, you're not fully committing, if that really is forever, is really just a blip in time, right? So I think in certain scenarios that makes sense. Now, if you're stuck in a situation, or you're choosing not to change, or you're choosing to never commit, or something is getting in the way of progress, I think that's very different. But if you're like, hey, I need a second to myself to like figure some stuff out, or work through some things, or like, I'm just in this like phase in my life, or whatever it is, it on the grand scale of forever, it's just a moment, right? And so I think that for me put a lot of things into perspective.
But do you really have forever?
Well, most of us,
it's a long time, but
most of us are religious.
Time.
Most of us follow a religion, right? And so like the concept of forever is ingrained in belief systems, right? So if you really do believe in that, and this is actually your person, then like forever really does exist, right? Theoretically.
I like that, Enos.
So we're looking at this from a relationship context.
It could be from career. It could be so many things. I mean, think about it like this too. If you're thinking about retirement, okay, but you spend most of your years working, and retirement is like this much time out of this much time. You understand what I'm saying? So it can be looked at in so many different ways.
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to say it's only a waste if you haven't learned something from it. Now, even if you go through, this is just my philosophy, even if you go through something that was terrible, let's say, I don't think it's necessarily a waste. It all depends on how you look at it. So if you can pull from that experience, then I think it's not a waste. I think the waste comes when you're using your time and you're not, I think Inez has said this. Inaz, I'm sorry. Inaz has said this. I made my joke earlier and then I said it. But Inaz had said earlier about the growth part. So if any of those if you look over your life and you can see where certain opportunities that you had, that you grew from it, even though you wish you didn't go through it, I still think it wasn't a waste of time because you've gotten something from that.
I think there are lessons in life, and some people have to go through lessons to get it right. I absolutely agree with that. I don't think that anybody is a waste of your time. I think that if it ain't a blessing, it's definitely a lesson to be learned.
Yeah, I think that, it is interesting because, especially in the confines of dating, women often bring this up since they're on this clock, right? It seems like women are forever on a clock versus men,
Everybody's on the clock. Everybody.
Well, apparently brothers are taught that we ain't got no clock. Women are taught that they have a very small window. And so as the ages keep going up for women, they become hyper focused and in somewhat of a rush to find that person because of the amount of time. So they'd be like, well, if I'm 32, right? They'd be like, well, I can't spend 6 months with you if you don't know what you're doing. Some women want to spend a week with you. Oh, you don't look like you know what you want to do. Psh, I'm out, player. And it's just like, to me, it's like, I like genuinely hanging out with people, talking to people and listening to people. I love to listen because you learn a lot about people when you listen. You would even learn that you don't have to say as much if you would just listen. People will answer your questions if you just wait long enough. But so many people get so excited or impatient when they listen to folk. They often jump in when they were going to answer it eventually. But also I know why people don't wait. It's because people just be going on forever. But I do think that it is interesting that, like, if you just genuinely value people's time and enjoy who this person is, it's never really a waste. You might be disappointed in the outcome, but like you guys both said, like, you learn a lot from people. You might learn that, hey, listen, you could have learned business from this person. You could have learned how to interact and understand social situations from this person. It might not have worked to your end goal, but you can take every conversation, every interaction to the next thing. And then hopefully when you actually get the thing that you're looking for, you can actually keep it. Because nothing hurts worse than getting to the thing that you really want and then you lose it. Like, nobody wants that.
Okay. Anybody else? One of the things that this is a correction. So I think that one of the things that you stated was women are rushed and men have all the time in the world. And I want to disagree with that. And the reason why I disagree with it, I think women do rush. I do agree with that. Women want to lock and move forward. Absolutely. But I agree. It depends on how you look at it. I do think that women rush because they want to be married, they want to have children. But when it comes to all the time in the world, when we think in the grand scheme of things, men don't live as long as women do. So if we're talking about time and just going based off of, stats, actually men live shorter lives than women do in the grand scheme of things. If you look at it from a bigger picture, not just when it comes to the biological clock and all of those types of things.
But you know why we live shorter than women do?
Why? Because you're not married. She's not there to tell you to go to the hospital, go to the doctor to get yourself checked up.
This is true. Women understand that part of her survival is in you surviving. So you're not about to die on my watch. So they'll make sure he getting the right food.
My husband gonna live forever.
You making sure that he going to them doctor's appointment. Hey, you look like you a little sluggish today. Hey, we're going to the doctor. Man, I ain't going to no doctor. They just da. And then also another reason why us men seem to die more is because we ignore a lot of things. We sweep a lot of stuff on the rug, and we take a lot more risks. The stuff in my field, because I work in the home building field, right?
Mm,
Construction, all that other stuff. The stuff that we do to get a job done be the most unsafe, but we be like, we got it done though.
sure. Right. Because I even, I see men when I drive and I'm looking at these, especially construction workers. And you see all this dust, they don't have their mask on. I'm like, you're
Nope.
inhaling this every single day. That cannot be healthy. Like you have
Nope.
to put a mask on or something. I would be like that wife that'd be like, oh, you don't got your mask on today? Him, put it on. I
Nope.
need my husband.
We be having dust, wood chips, gases, paint. It don't matter. Like, bro, we go through these job sites and it's just be like, what is the task? Did the task get completed? Okay, great. I'm going home. That's it.
That's crazy. Yes,
So
Enoch.
oh, go ahead.
So to add on to what you were saying, Shan, men too have a biological clock, and I think we're just starting to acknowledge that aspect as well. But then there's like the other part, right? Because we hear this in these spaces all the time about men needing to be at a certain financial goal before they take on a woman, right? And then the other side to that also comes from men is if you wait until you've reached that goal to find a woman, then you're not sure of her intentions of being with you, right? So when we're talking about like this idea of men having so much more time to find somebody, y'all express all the time the duality of that, right? Is you kind of do, even though there are biological factors. And yes, that does get ignored. So, we'll just set that over here for now. But if you wait too long, then you're not actually able to suss out like the genuine reason that woman is there. So do men really actually have that long to choose a woman?
I think you do. I just think that you adjust your expectations when you actually understand like the purpose, because I think there's benefits to marrying young and there's benefits to marrying older, right? Because what you're looking for is different at 20 than what you're looking at 50. But at the end of the day, you're looking at for somebody that's going to be in agreement with you, right? Because how can two walk unless they agree, right?
Mhm.
So if you can't find any woman that can agree with you at 30 or at 20, it don't matter how much time you spend looking for her. You're looking for somebody that's going to work with you, whether it's to build you up. I actually think it might be slightly more beneficial younger because it's the adversity that you experience in relationships as you continue to grow that actually might make a better glue than when you both have your own stuff. Like you're 50, she's 50, y'all both got y'all money, y'all both got your houses. Now y'all gonna be arguing whose stuff y'all gonna keep. Both people have been keeping themselves and doing their own thing. And now you expect these people to want to forego what they've already built just to be with you. Pretty hard to do. That's why I think that a lot of older relationships don't work the same way as younger relationships, but you run a lot of risk of damaging a person in the younger ages because you're still trying to learn and grow through life. So you just take a risk.
I personally think that they're just two different. You're looking for just two different things. Okay. When you're younger, if you find a woman who can be the help me or whatever to you guys are both on the same path, you're motivating each other to get it, that'll be great. That's the ideal situation. Okay. But let's just say you're older. Maybe a divorce happened, or maybe you never were married. You're in a different time in your life. And to think that you don't need a companion during that time, I think that you do. It just looks a little different. Yeah, maybe you have to sort some things out as far as finances. I hate when people put finances as the uno, like the priority. You can figure that shit out. If you have a mate, y'all can figure that out. When you are older, I think that's the time that companionship means the most because life happens and you want somebody who's going to stick it through with you through life. You get sick. She's there to drive you, God forbid, drive you to the hospital. Like we were saying, make those appointments for you. She sees something's going wrong. Make sure that you're okay because we're all getting older. And so that companionship means a lot, because your kids are going to go off and they're going to have their own families. Who's going to take care of you? Who are you going to talk to? So I think that, me, I've had my grandparents, I have my great grandparents, and I just saw a dynamic where they needed each other. It was just like, I can't explain it. When one died, it became like a little void there. You understand what I'm saying? So I think it's important. I just think that it's just two different things that you're looking for at two different times in your life. I think they're both equally important, though, if that makes sense. Did that make sense?
Yeah. So I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think it's harder to build a feasible relationship? Do you think it's harder to build a workable relationship at 50, both people are older, or both people are younger?
Which one is harder?
Yeah, which one do you think has a better chance of building a workable relationship?
Well, I think stats show that the younger you are, right? If you're on the same path, that those relationships last longest. I'm not sure, but I think that anything can work if you pour into it. If both people are equally going to pour into it and they dedicate themselves to each other, it can work. If you dedicate yourself to your job, it'll work, right? You go every day, you make it a priority. The same thing as it comes to your home life. I just feel like if you work at it, it'll work. Things that you pour into, you get results.
I was
young and old.
I agree with some of the stuff that you were saying. One of the things, though, that this is just my opinion. I think that the older you are, and like you said, like in your 50s versus your 20s, and I know people disagree, but just based on stuff that I've kind of read, but like I said, I don't have definite stats right now, but I do remember reading something along those lines about the longer, so marriages that typically happen earlier, it increases the likelihood of divorce versus waiting later.
Gotcha.
And so based on that, I would surmise that if you got married, let's say in your 50s, I know a lot of people say, oh, you're just stuck in your ways, you're not going to be willing to change, things like that. But I also think the difference between that is because you know how you are, I think you're more cognizant of the partner that you choose because you want to find somebody that's in line with that. So you're not just looking at looks. Like typically when you're younger, you're like, no, they gotta be fine, and that kind of takes a little more precedence over other things that may be important. Whereas when I think you're older, you've lived enough life to realize that all of those things are important and you are more clear on what it is that you need. So I think you may vet a little better when you're older. And I think that sets the foundation for a better relationship.
I don't necessarily agree that picking older when you're older, that you're better at vetting. I just think that oftentimes when I hear a number of older people talk about, when they get into new relationships and stuff like that, it's almost like, I just need the bare minimum. I need you to be somebody that's going to be with me to the end. However the end is, whether it's 20, 30 years from now, I want somebody to be with me to help me, or to be with me, like I said, like when it's late at night.
Wife.
Yeah, it's like there was this guy recently, like there was this pastor. He was been playing around with this girl for like 20, 30 years. Then he just randomly decided to marry her when he basically in a wheelchair. Bro, the disrespect. Now, granted, she smiled and was like, hey, I got the ring now. But you didn't suck this woman's whole entire life. Now, granted, she could have left a long time ago.
Exactly.
She could have made some moves.
Well, they were together 20 years, right?
I don't care how long he was together.
She was together with him for 20 years without being married.
But the thing about, so what I'm saying to you is they were together 20 years. So you're saying he was stringing her along, playing with other people. Why? But if they were in a committed relationship for 20 years,
I
The
guarantee
rings
you,
just
if you've been messing
solidifies it.
around with
It
this
just
woman for 20 years, he been messing with other girls. I guarantee you.
you don't know that. You don't make the pastor a hoe. Stop.
So I wanted to, because Miss Egan can correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard what she said very differently than the way Harrison heard it. I don't think it's more so about you learn to vet better, but you have a better understanding of self the older that
Right.
you get. Your identity is so much more solidified. And so when you're choosing a partner, you're choosing it from a different place. You're choosing it based on who you are and not societal expectations. I don't think that necessarily means you sharpen the skill on how to suss that out in somebody else, but it's more so I know me better now than I did when I was 20 years old. And so the things I'm looking for have now shifted as a result of that. Like, was that what you were trying to say, mistaken?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear that, but I still am somewhat on the fence. I agree. You definitely know yourself, but that still goes to the point that people they be like, they say older people are stuck in their ways. You're not gonna try to convince this person to try to work with things that they don't feel like they should have to work with. So I just think that it's along the exact same lines of like, yo, like they not changing. And so they're gonna find somebody that's gonna deal with them how they are. If you're not
Right.
a very agreeable person and I want somebody to let me walk over you, she's gonna choose a dude that's gonna let him walk over, that's gonna let her
Is
walk over
that
him, keep it moving.
is, is that not smarter than pretending to pick somebody and
No, it's
convince
not
your
smarter.
hang on, let me finish. So like the idea, so what happens with a lot of younger people is they tell themselves, because they don't understand themselves and their boundaries the same way, is that they tell themselves that this is something I can put up with, this is something I can deal with. 10, 15, 20 years down the line, they're like, oh no, I lied to myself, this isn't actually something I can put up with. Versus when you understand, like, hey, I'm unyielding about these things, and this person's unyielding about these things, that idea of your tolerance towards certain things is so much more solidified that you're picking somebody with a more realistic understanding of who they are, as opposed to idealizing what you can tolerate.
I agree. In that aspect, it is indeed smarter. Because why are you gonna choose somebody that you know off rip that y'all gonna be bumping heads, right? But if you still have a problematic attitude because you don't listen to nobody, you do what you want to do, how you want to do it, and you don't care about who it hurts, and you got a person that is willing to endure that. I mean, I don't think that's actually a better relationship. All it is, you just found a better punching bag that you're dealing with.
That sounds like he needs to change himself. Listen, so um,
I agree. He does need to change
because
himself.
he don't need to be
But
with nobody doing that.
Mhm.
Which y'all gonna see, even if you find somebody who punches back, y'all just gonna be going like this. That's not okay. That's toxic.
people like toxic. That's the reason why people
That's
be
what I
in
was
these
about to say.
relationships.
Sometimes you're attracted to toxicity and then you get so worn out because you got yourself in this toxic relationship and now you stressed looking like you 80 years old, you only 40. You're mad at the world, like, oh, women are this, and this, and you chose that. That's what you chose.
I agree, but just like when we talk about the Kiki Palmer situation, you got
Oh,
to understand that as men, like he liked the way she look. We like the way women look. When y'all wear the tight revealing, you got the titties poking out, you got the tight dress on. Most men like that. However, we don't want other people seeing the thing that we like. We want that to be for ourselves. So initially, he's like, yo, this looks great. And a lot of times, brothers see the good looking woman that they got in the nice revealing outfit as like a status symbol to him. Like, oh, look at this fine woman that I got. But then when somebody rubs up on that fine woman that you got because she got her titties out, okay, well, now we're having a very different perspective. That now, though I like the way she looks, now I have to deal with other stuff that I don't particularly like. And some people might think I look dumb because I got her out looking like this. And now I got people coming on touching what I think belongs to me.
well, if she allows people to touch her, that's kind of her.
I'm gonna be
that's
looking.
that's two different things.
Mhm.
Lenas, did you have something to say? It seemed like you were You didn't have anything to say. So I had a conversation with somebody, and it goes to the compatibility. I find that sometimes what happens is we don't. So to find out if somebody's compatible with you, you have to be vulnerable, right? You have to let them know what it is your needs are. And sometimes we're not open to allowing people to know what our needs are. So we automatically say, "Oh, she can't do that because she's not volunteering to do it. She should just know that I need this, and she didn't do it." But if you articulate like, hey, this is what I like my mate to be, or this is what I need in my life, and you can see that she can successfully do that because you've given her an opportunity to prove that she can do that, you'll be amazed. A lot of times we knock people out of the equation and we just never even gave them an opportunity. It was so funny because the scenario was if you have a 7. So I was talking to somebody, a friend of mine, and he was saying, if I have a 7, but she does this, this, and this, but then I have a 9 and she can't do these things these 7s have done, then I'd rather take the 7. And so my question to him was, well, did you get the 9 an opportunity, or did you just look at her as being a 9 and you thought, oh, she can only be because you have this thing about 9s not wanting to do anything. But you were okay with doing it with the 7, like, hey, these are the things that I need, and the 7 stepped in, but you never even came to the 9 and said, well, are you willing to do this? Because you felt like you put her on a pedestal, maybe she won't. You never gave her an opportunity to do it. You understand? Does that make sense? This is a real conversation.
Well, my question is, it sounds like what you're saying is he may be treating the 7s different than a 9 in terms of expectation. But my thing is, you're looking at it from that perspective. I guess what I was thinking is, are the 7s being who they are just naturally and doing whatever they do versus the 9 waiting for him to ask her, does he know how to do it? Or she know how to do something. You know what I'm saying? Like,
so I even find this with myself. I'll take men out of the equation. I'll say to myself, when I have somebody and I'm like, oh, I'm a little bit more vulnerable with him because I'm like, okay, I ain't afraid to lose him like that. You know what I'm saying? But if I got this, I'm like, I'm a tiptoe. I'm like, I'm not going to give him all my problems because I don't want him to run away. You feel what I'm saying? But you should not be that way. You need to give them the same treatment you give that person. You need to give that person, because you're never going to know if he can handle it or if she can handle it if you never give them an opportunity, because you'll be amazed that 9 might really like you and like, hey, I didn't know this was a necessity. Because guess what? People, you're not the first relationship that people have been in. And another person may require something totally different than you required.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to give them an opportunity. There are basic things like cooking, cleaning that men like, but when it comes to stuff of detail, like, oh, I need you to budget my money, or I need you to do this, nobody's going to know that if you don't tell them, right? So it's like the fine details. Like if you give people, if you like somebody and you give them an opportunity, you tell them, you have to tell them your needs. You have to express it. You cannot assume that they automatically know. And I find that's a lot of issues that a lot of people come across. They don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want to tell people. And then it's like you're basically just not open and you think like this person is not compatible with me. And you may be. You're just not having the right conversation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I think women suffer from that more so than men.
Oh, for sure. You may be right.
I think that's our issue. I think a lot of times men are very direct about what they want, what they want from their partner. I think a lot of times women get caught up in wanting to be the person that the partner wants, while at the same time not expressing what they want or what they need as well. And then we get upset at them for not meeting our needs when it's truly on us to express what those needs are.
I have a couple of thoughts on this. So when you were giving the example of the brother that had the woman that's a 7 or a 9, typically speaking, people that aren't as attractive, they build other qualities to compensate.
For sure.
Right? Now, when you are really attractive, most people come to you regardless of how you are. Right? And so typically sometimes what happens with brothers is it's not that we don't tell you what we want you to do. So many brothers before you didn't require, didn't ask you to do anything. And so you think because you're attractive that you don't really have to put in the same amount of work, or you don't have the same kind of skills that the other women's develop with character.
Do you so my question is, does she think it or do you think it? Because you said
Well,
she thinks it, but is it that she thinks it or does that you think it?
but I'm not exactly sure who's actually thinking it the most out of that scenario. But what I can say is this is that, like, oftentimes, who you are consistently, that's the stuff that's going to show. There's a reason why the woman at a set that was a 7 showed certain qualities versus the woman that was a 9, she showed these qualities. Now, I think also a level of it is that sometimes in dating, we see certain things that we would like and we think it's possible to fix, but most of the time, if we feel like we got to ask for it, we don't really want it. Like, there used to be this age-old thing where women be like, I don't want you to ask me, do I want to do the dishes? I want you to always know to just do the dishes because you see that the dishes are dirty. So I see that happen a lot of times with women. They be like, I want you to just know, I need you to observe and da da da. So until it's instead of just telling him, hey, can you just do the dishes more often? No, what she will do is get upset. He ain't washed those dishes. And so I actually kind of disagree a little bit because, like, women tell men what they want all the time. And a lot of brothers have been conditioned to just cater to her needs, which causes a lot of issues in a relationship. And then when the brother actually spoke out and said, hey, I actually don't like this, he got such a negative response from that woman. So now he bottles it up and he just continues to go on through his day, and he gonna get what he want on the back end. And I think that too often when it comes to interactions with men and women, like, women are a lot more vocal when they feel pain than when men feel pain. We're more inclined to suffer through a relationship for years upon years. That woman feels 5 minutes of pain. Hey, listen, what's up? Why aren't you doing the things that I need you? I need you to be great here. He needs you to be great, but he's more inclined to suffer through and just keep it going on about his business. So I just think it's just weird to me personally.
So I I wish men would stop doing that. Like, we've normalized that as if that's okay and that's right. Because here's, I think, where Shan is going with this. If men were upfront about those things off rip and didn't have to wait until that woman was used to that kind of behavior, there wouldn't be such an abrasive reaction to things. If men were more intolerable from the very beginning and said, listen, if you don't meet these standards, kick rocks, you wouldn't have to then worry about what that reaction looks like about putting your foot down and then having to eat more like BS and bottle those feelings until you explode, right? I think it creates space for a really unhealthy dynamic. But here's the other side to that, right? The one thing that I do know about women is if she likes that man, no matter what any other man has expected of her, if that man says, hey, I need you to jump this high every time I say jump, you know what she's going to do? She's going to jump that high. But if you can't provide that directive, she's just going to assume that your standards are like every other dude's. And I don't think that's a fair way to lay foundation for a relationship. I get that, like, people feel this thing where, people should just intuitively know each other. It takes work to get there. And I think in the generation that we live in, we like to bypass the work part and just get to the results part without actually laying the groundwork to get there. You get the whole knowing somebody instinctively from telling people, hey, I need you to do the dishes. Hey, I need you to not pop off whenever I'm giving you some criticism. Hey, I need you to like help with the kids more. Hey, I need you to like look put together when I get home from work. Whatever it is that you need in a relationship, if you're not vocalizing that, you never give the opportunity to the other person to get to know you to a point where, like, 2, 5, 10 years down the line, where y'all just move in like this synchronicity, right? You don't get that. That whole, like, I've heard so many men say, When I come home from work, I just need a minute to myself. If you haven't laid the groundwork for that and have told her that in a way that she understands it, not I told her the way that I talk to other men, you'll give her that opportunity to provide that for you consistently, right? And so I think sometimes, like, when we play those kind of mental manipulations or like those mind games of like, I don't, the person who cares least wins the most, like when we do that, we really rob ourselves of like having the genuine connections that like we all aspire to have.
I think
I
I think that's
definitely agree.
interesting.
And
And
this is to help you, all you men out there. You get
I
yourself
was
a 9. Make sure you communicate.
I
Make
think I had said this before. Like it was something that I would do. It in my mind, it wasn't a big deal, but like I would come in the house, like I'm on the phone talking with my friend. I walk in the house and I'm just going, we're chit chatting or whatever. And then one day, my husband ended up saying, like, "Listen, I'm gonna need you to stop being on the phone when you come in the house." And I'm like, my first response was like, what's the big deal? Whatever. And he's just like, I don't like that. Like when you first walk in the door, you greet the people that's in the house like, hey, or whatever. And he's like, you're on the phone, you don't speak, you don't say hey, nothing. So he was like, I'm gonna need you to, at least give me the first 10 minutes when you come through the door, right? And I tried my best to respect. I'm not saying that I didn't mess up, because that was a habit that I had to unlearn, and he did. He gave me grace, but I do make sure that, since that was something that he expressed to me, that said, I don't really like when you do this. I'm gonna need you to change that. I was willing to do that because, what was 10 minutes? He's not asking a lot. And so I think it goes back to what, like Inaz has said, is that you can't necessarily expect a person to make changes or have a level like, you should know not to do that kind of thing, because their experiences are different, right? So, but it's on you as the person who you want your needs met. You have to express that, because I could have just kept going, and inside he just mad like, gosh, you're so disrespectful. I have no idea that he's viewing this as being disrespectful. I'm just like, going on about my business. And, that could have been a point of contention between us because he didn't actually express that. Now if he expressed it and then I just was like, all right, you're just gonna have to get over it. Now that becomes a my issue. You know what I'm saying? It's not no longer his issue, because he shared, how he felt. And I think a lot of times that's where we go wrong. We'll not say nothing and then get upset, at the other person for not just knowing. And, you can't.
Okay, I just want I want to say this real quick, because I can't disagree with Anaz and Mistaken in regards to us men setting the foundation that we want to set from rip, but we can't skim over a point that Harrison made, that I would say that most of the men we get to see and experience often. When Harrison made the point about the seven compensating for whatever the whatever she's lacking in the looks department, making up for something else, making it up somewhere else, the nine doesn't do that. Typically, from my experience anyway, the nine is going to show up the way she wants to show up. Either you're going to choose to accept it or you're not, because she's beautiful and she can get the attention that she wants, when she wants it, how she wants it, from somebody else. So, yeah, we should set the foundation and we should set the premise. But this nine, most of this nines, and I'd say her entire life, she's been treated like a princess. She's had that pretty privilege that that seven standard just hasn't had it on the same level. So it I understand what your friend was saying, Shan. Now, do I necessarily agree? No, because I believe we men, we should set the foundation and be willing to let any female go that doesn't fall into our program. But it is different dealing with a 9 than dealing with a 7. Dealing with a 7 is different than dealing with a 5, and so forth. Because they do have these other attributes typically that compensate where they lack on the look side. Because women are also highly competitive, and you guys stack yourselves up against the next woman typically.
Go
So
ahead, Ina.
like we can't skim over that happens. So I agree with your point you made, Harrison, and I also agree with you and Nas completely. Like, man, we have to be willing to say F you 9. Like, that's not what I want.
Go ahead, Inaz, because I got a feeling you're going to say the same thing, and then I'm going to go. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think it's so interesting that like women get demonized or praised for these things when men are the ones who've set up the system. The reason that the 7 has to compensate for her looks is because men look at her and say, well, you're not pretty enough to move like that, so what else do you have to offer? The reason the 9 gets to get away with what she gets to get away with is because men say, oh, she's pretty enough that I can put up with that. Like, men set the standard for women to move in that direction and then don't provide any sort of additional clarity when things change, and just base the fact of you're either a good woman or you're not based on the systems that are created by men. What I'm saying about like being upfront about your needs off rip is that you're putting everybody on an equal playing field. The looks just then become the bonus, right? Where now the 9 understands these are the things that you have to bring to the table. Being pretty is just not enough. I understand that a woman's value is in her looks. I get that, right? But if men are saying that only gets you through the door, it doesn't mean that you're going to be kept, then that needs to also be communicated through the way that the 9 is treated. It can't just be attention, right? These women are getting relationships, they're getting all of the things that other women aspire to and all of this stuff. The moment men decide to collectively restructure the way meritocracy works, I think you'll see a lot of changed behavior in these like upper echelon of women.
And one of my major points since I've been on here has been we are the ones that have to reset this entire standard, period. I've always said that if we want change, let's get off YouTube and quit complaining about it and fix what we know to be broken instead of complaining about women. Which is why you hardly ever hear me say anything to the women, is because I believe it's on men to fix it, which is why I agreed that, if we set that standard right off rip, right out the gate, then they can either choose to take it or leave it. And if they can't fulfill that side of it, don't send for these hoes. Just keep it moving. Okay, she a 9. Find another one. Find one that fits your program the way you want your program to be run. And that's just the way it should be. But instead, far too often we see these guys bending over backwards because the woman looks like Kelly Rowland or whoever the 9 standard is, right? Like, oh man, man, my chick bad. Yeah, she got a bad stinking ass attitude, and you put up with it. I would never do that. When I get home, I get a sandwich because my chick made a sandwich before dinner because she knew I was hungry after work. Yo 9 didn't do that, did she? No, I had to go make my own sandwich. Well, is that what you want, or is that what you're settling for? We need to quit settling for bullshit and get what we want and set it right out the gate, or let it be known, hey, look here, Miss 9, all you are is a bust down until I find the 7 that fits everything that I need. Like, and I just think we BS way too much. I really do. You get better results when you just keep it up, keep it 100 right out the gate. You get better results. Period.
Absolutely. And I wanted to go back to what Inaz said. I don't care if a woman is in love with you. I don't care what she is. She is going to do whatever it is that because women want to do things for their men. They want to. It's just in us. If I'm in love with you, and that's where the love comes from. Now, we had a conversation a long time ago when it's a transactional relationship. Those are not the ones we're talking about. We're talking about when she is really feeling this man. that she is going to go all in for him. I don't care what she looks like. She's going to do what it is that you need her to do. But you can't be treating her like, oh, she's this 9. I'm not going to give it to her because I may lose her. No, you have to use her for what she's there for, and that's to assist you. You're shooting yourself in the, like Nina said, you're damaging the entire relationship if you don't give her an opportunity to do that. And it's a great way to test whether she's in it for you, if she has feelings for you, because I'm gonna tell you, women are made the same. If we like something, if we want something, we're in love with something, we will go to bat for that one thing, period.
Well, I agree with you. If you respond to a woman like a fan, that's what you're gonna be. She's gonna treat you like you're disposable, like every other brother, because the 9s be getting fans. They got OnlyFans now, so they out here making it do what they do, right?
Listen, you talk about.
OnlyFans
I wish y'all would stop.
2 different things.
I'm saying they got fans. They got OnlyFans. You know what I'm saying? They got
fans. Attention is totally different than love.
Yes,
even if you get the attention,
I get
if
you.
you're lacking the love, yes, you'll keep chasing attention. But once you find the love, the person that you connect with, then you want their attention. It shifts, and you're going to do everything to keep that person's attention on you.
She will give up that Instagram for you. Okay, she will delete that account for you.
but that's cool. But it's just like, we can't treat like women. Many times people be like, all women ain't the same. They be like, all men ain't the same. So you're not going to sit up here and tell me that a woman that's been getting all this attention simply from her looks, she's just going to stop responding that way, as far as like, oh, well, I'm gonna change how I naturally interact just because I see a guy that I like. If you start acting in a way that she don't agree with, she gonna be like, well, there's another guy that keeps showing me his attention, which is one of the main reasons why most women stay single, is because they know they can get attention from wherever they want, right? It might not be the right attention, but women be out here looking around doing this, that, and the third. And I would say this, and this is part of the reason why I said what I said, as far as the qualities, as far as the skills that you develop from having certain weaknesses. You have to understand that even as a brother, we do a lot of risk assessment, right? Many times women will tell us, hey, stop picking the women that dress like this if you don't like that type of thing, right? And typically when you have been socially like branded that your body is one of your best assets, you're going to continue to do the thing that gets you majority of the attention. So if you out here and you're a 9 and you're like the most finest thing walking, and guys literally just be like, oh my God, I just want to just sniff her hair, right? You got that kind of woman, right? The brothers that ain't fans, and we treat her like we would treat any other woman, and we're trying to build the foundation, this, that, and the third, we're going to notice how she interacts with people. We're going to notice what her Instagram look like. We're going to notice what skills she gives without us having to say anything. And we're going to be like, okay, what is the likelihood that if I try to build this foundation and try to teach her how I want XYZ, what is the likelihood of her actually willingly making this adjustment?
Go ahead, Ina.
So, Shan, I want to prove a point. I'm going to use you as an example because I think you are a beautiful woman. You ever test boundaries with a man that you really like around like attention or leaving or whatever, and he tells you, go ahead, do it? What's your response?
When I test boundaries?
With a man that you genuinely like, and he tells you, go ahead and do that thing, like he calls your bluff, what's your response?
I'm gonna be mad.
She'll be lying. She'll be testing boundaries with people she likes.
Most women do, right? Even
if I have in my mind. So what I think she's asking me is, if I'm trying to test to see how he feels about me, so I'll test him and say, okay, I'm gonna do this, and then he says, okay, go do it. I'm like,
no, okay, let me rephrase it.
Is that what you're
right?
saying?
No,
Okay,
let
give
me
me an
rephrase
example.
it. So with what Harrison is saying about, you know, beautiful women who will just say things like, you know, well, I can go get this attention elsewhere, or I can get this thing that I need from another dude, right?
Mhm.
A man that you genuinely like who tells you, go ahead and do it. What's your response to that? Do you go do it?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So basically, he calls you your bluff and you fold, right?
For sure.
That's the thing that women keep saying, right? When you really like a man, you might say that, but if that man has a backbone and has boundaries and is clear on those things, he's going to let you do it, because if you do it, you're out. He's going to find somebody else to fill that
I
spot.
see what you're saying.
And women know that. So when they make those comments or they do those things, women who genuinely care, because this is what Shan was saying earlier, like if she doesn't care, she doesn't even do what she wants anyways. If that woman cares, she's going to fold. Like there's no question about it. She will follow your leadership. She will be moldable. She'll literally, this whole thing is like, I think right now the internet's calling it the shit test, right? So when that man flips that around, right? Women really appreciate a man who stands on his morals and laurels, says what he means what he says. So if that's not behavior that you tolerate, then don't tolerate it. And if you do not tolerate it, that woman has either no choice but to respect it or keep it moving. And I think a lot of times people come from this like scarcity mindset where if that woman keeps it moving, you're never going to get another woman like her again. And so you tolerate bad behavior, which just spirals you into a shitty relationship. I really wish for men's happiness that they would stop doing that, because it is a form of self-sabotage. You sucker yourself into a relationship you're not fulfilled in.
And I think I had said this before, but what you're saying is spot on, because in our younger dating years of being together, like when we would get in arguments or something like that, my thing was, I'm gonna walk out, right? Because I really wanted him to grab me back, right? And he used to do that.
I thought she was saying when I gave that example, but I'm like,
and he would do that. So it'd be like every time, I'd be like, oh, and then he'd be like, come here, And then one time I was like, oh, and he was like, go ahead then. It just changed the dynamic, because I'm like, wait, that's not usually what's supposed to happen. That usually don't happen. Exactly. And I am a tester, so I went ahead and I left, and he didn't come after, because in my mind I'm like, oh, he trying to play hard. All right. And I went anyway. He did not come.
Well, he better come after me.
He did not come. And so I came back.
If you're watching, you better come after me. I don't know what mistake you're talking about over here. You better come running after me.
And he didn't come.
I'm running after me.
So I came back like, you good? Like I'm trying to be, the one to bring it back, because that was usually his role. You know what I'm saying? But I can say from that experience, he changed the dynamic of the way our interaction occurred, because now that doesn't happen. Once he like, oh, you gonna go? Okay, go ahead. And I'm just like, all right, I'm good. So she's absolutely right. Like, in general, girls, men and women, you teach people how you want to be treated. So if you don't set your own, if you don't know yourself well enough to know what your boundaries are, what your standards are, then you give the other person the opportunity to set those for you or tell you what those are going to be. But once you come to the realization of what that is, and you set those expectations early on and lay that foundation, is really, really good for the both of you, because now you're clear on what it is you need to do in regards to that other person.
I mean, I agree. Men should lead and women should follow. Yes, I agree. We should set the foundation and this, that, and the third. And I agree with you guys as well that, listen, a lot of brothers aren't willing to do that because of fear of taking a risk that they don't really want to take, right? I agree with all of that.
What's the risk that they don't want to take though?
The risk of ruining the entire dynamic, the risk of losing chance of having sex or a chance to keep this relationship going. A lot of brothers are very risk adverse because you have to make decisions based upon the best outcome, which is why I said what I was saying earlier as far as this woman who had to compensate for her weaknesses versus this woman who doesn't have to compensate for her weaknesses. They usually naturally respond differently because like this one has been conditioned to move this way versus this one wasn't. So what is the likelihood, just like when I made the argument about earlier, if you're older, you're 50 years old, you got terrible habits, you're like, shoot, I want what I want the way that I want it, and I'm gonna find a person that agrees with that, right? The likelihood of you changing your behavior after you then spent 18, 20, 30 years of getting the same intention, responding the same way, getting the same results, what is the likelihood that I will be the one guy that's going to change that? Is it impossible? No. But is it likely? And many brothers will be like, hey, listen.
I would say yes.
Yes, you are.
Because it's always that one. Because a girl is looking for
that's
that
the
woman.
problem. Y'all always think there's that one, and then the one never show up, and y'all crying 50 years later. That'd be the problem.
It definitely is. Like somebody just asked, like, why not? Why was I running? Like, younger. Let me answer that.
He was younger.
And that's what I was going to say. Being young, what you perceive to be good or love is totally different when you get older. What my perception of that was, I guess, movies, whatever, I don't know. But my perception of that was if he came after me, then he loved me. He still loved me. He wasn't, he wanted me. Right? If he came after me. If he didn't, then that means he didn't. So when he cut that out, it made me then act any other manner, like trying to get his attention, trying to get his love back. And that was very immature. But like I said, I was in my early 20s. I didn't, it was dumb.
So it looks a little different now in your older years.
Oh, absolutely.
It looks more like you guys have an argument, so you may not speak for a day. So you don't leave, like you're not running, but let's just say you're quiet. Mm-hmm. So you're not running after somebody, but it's kind of like, well, who's gonna speak first? Kind of thing. So
it's about giving the space. Like now for me, and even then when you're younger, these are the other things that men don't talk about when they talk about wanting younger women. We're more likely to pop off, at least from my experience. I look at how I was when I was younger. I was ready to pop off quick with my mouth, whereas as I've gotten older, I've learned how to control that a lot better, especially in an argument. Like younger, we arguing, I'm going for the jugular. I'm going to say some shit, I'm going to say something. And then later on, I may apologize or whatever. But whereas now I am more likely to watch what I say. And if I did say something unintentionally, I am okay with going and apologizing about, identifying what it is that I said that, wasn't appropriate or whatever. I have no issue with doing that now. But I just think that's the older you get, you learn along the way. You just have to make sure that you find somebody that's willing to go through that change and learning progression with you. I'll say that's where the risk of being young, dating real young occurs, because sometimes you don't have the same tolerance, and yeah.
For me, I don't lash out. I'm emotional. People don't like emotional women. I'm emotional.
Isaiah, I was a red flag. But you know what? Again, you got to look at where you're at too in New York.
That's normal.
That was normal.
Yeah, but
That was normal.
I don't think that just because your age dictates you're willing to be accountable. That's only if you had enough circumstances in your life that made you see the value of accountability, or you had people that brought you up in that. And
Mhm.
I just think that personally, like, I understand that if a woman likes you, right, you get a lot of leeway. However, how long does it take for a woman to decide that she likes you? Some women find out quickly. Some women develop over time. Some women might not even like you out the gate, but over time, they'll be like, oh, this guy wasn't too bad. The thing is as brothers, we have to make decisions based upon the information. And we got to figure out, since we're going to be basically doing most of the front loading as far as taking a lot of the financial risks and physical risks of this relationship, you should think about who it is that you're dealing with, and think about the situations and what can come forth as much as possible. Because as much as women don't want to admit it, patriarchy is the reason why guys are still willing to take care of y'all, even though they may not get nothing from y'all for years.
So I
Years.
think that proves my point, Harrison. Like, if men are more upfront and less lenient about their boundaries from the very beginning, that risk gets mitigated because that woman is either going to mold to your leadership or she's going to be abrasive and she's got to keep it moving. Right.
You know,
I think.
go ahead,
That's
Enos. I'm
why
gonna let
that's
you
why
finish.
African
I
dudes
want to go
be
after
winning out here in America too.
you. Go ahead, Enos.
So, like, that's my whole point, right? Is men will decide like this level of tolerance that they have for things, right? And then bottle that up as that progressively gets worse because now you've dictated what accountability looks like in a relationship. Women don't necessarily learn accountability from their girlfriends. Yes, some girlfriends hold each other accountable. Yes, some women will hold each other accountable. But that's not where women really learn accountability. It's from men, right? So if men are like, listen, this is how I do things. You're either going to fit my program or you're someone else is going to take your spot. Women only have two choices. They're either going to mold to your request or they're going to keep it moving, right? Until they find somebody who they can mold to, right?
Mhm.
Liking a man has a huge part to do with it. Yes, some women take some time, but you know what really speeds up that process is a man that doesn't play about his boundaries.
Yep. Yep.
That inspires so much respect. And we've heard time and time again the way that men feel loved is the language of respect. If you respect yourself enough to not play about your boundaries, that woman will respect you. Respect you enough to get out your way or respect you enough to follow your program. That's it. Those are her only options.
Well, sometimes leaving is also a level of accountability. If you sit here and you see this woman and she clearly is doing a whole bunch of stuff that you don't agree with, mitigate, that's another way to mitigate risk. If you see people shooting down the street, I can mitigate risk and go the opposite direction and not be the next person shot. If this woman is showing me clear things that I know is an issue, I'm mitigating risk, and I'm also showing a level of accountability. Hey, it was a pleasure meeting you, ma'am. You take it easy, enjoy the rest of your day, and break out. And
But
then
my
she can be like, then she
so
can just turn around and just either wonder about it, or B, she can start like she can start just going to the next guy. Listen, accountability don't always mean I got to tell you what you did wrong. I ain't got to be in your face teaching all this stuff. Sometimes just the consequence of your action. Like if this is the fifth guy in a week that just said the exact same thing to me and you walked away, then you can sit down and be like, huh, it's a very odd occurrence that this keeps happening. Or you can
fifth
be
guy in a
like,
week.
you said
Uh,
what?
s-
It's a hypothetical situation.
Okay, that's very helpful. So my whole point in this, I think we just went down a rabbit hole. My whole point is this: is if you have a person, don't just go by her looks. Always test her. Like give her a real scenario. Like Zena said, set boundaries. Say what it is that you want, just to see if you're compatible. Just give it a chance. Don't automatically think just because she's a nice looking woman, oh, she's used to this, and this. Because you may be missing out on your blessing because you're not really going in being authentic. Does that make sense?
I agree with you 100%. Setting the foundation, setting boundaries,
Mhm.
being respectful, being upfront. I'm with all of that. but when the rubber meets the road, what he gonna do?
Oh, you already thinking negative. I can't do this.
Well, this is one of the things that you said that I don't necessarily agree with.
And we gotta move on. So we're gonna
Okay, where you said about the point I'm out. Sometimes things don't need to be explained. You just break out. I always think, and this is just me, you always want to give the other person an opportunity to know, even if you know that you're breaking out, like I'm not dealing with it. I think it's a great idea to tell her why you're leaving, why you don't want to be. And the reason is not necessarily for you. It's more so for her, because it may be a situation. Listen, like y'all were talking earlier, it may be a situation in which she's experienced where nobody has ever called her on her bullshit, so she doesn't know. So in that regard, you let her know, and then you break out. The next time she's interacting with somebody, she now at this point have some knowledge about certain behaviors that she may not have been aware of. It's not.
Let me say this real fast. I'm gonna let you go, Mike. This whole ghosting is so immature. It is like it is the most immature thing I have ever seen in my life. Have a freaking backbone. Talk to people. If you spend enough time, it's a level of respect you have for people just for being human beings. Okay. I guess I'm a teacher, so I don't mind speaking to people.
Maybe that's what it
is. Yeah. So if you're a teacher, if I just respect, maybe
it's conditioning.
Listen. If that person is not meant for you, that doesn't mean that person's a bad person. It just means she's not good for you in a romantic sense. It does not mean you got to throw the whole person away. She's a bad person. He's a bad person. Talk about it. Hey, this is just not going to work. And these are the reasons why. And then let it go. The whole, it's like manipulation in a kind of way. I don't know what y'all get out of that.
I think it's just immature. It's not a mature way. Yeah, it's not a mature way to handle stuff.
So I'll say this with ghosting. There's two major reasons. There's an immature reason, like you're speaking to, Shan, but there's another real reason. Women will interpret it as ghosting, but when Mistaken was talking, I find it very comical that women kind of forget who they are and how y'all behave in certain situations. When we're dating women, and I can go all the way back into my 20s, we have to realize, and the men will tell you if you ask us, it's extremely hard for women to accept rejection. It's extremely hard for women to be told no. Mm-hmm. In a situation where you're trying to figure out the best way to tell a woman you're about to reject her, most men will default to, let me just not show up. Like,
what about so that sounds like an interaction. It's just the way you do it. So maybe if you don't feel comfortable, if you're not a man enough to let her cry on your shoulder because you don't feel like being through all that sappy stuff, depending on how long your relationship was, okay?
Yeah.
Maybe send her a closure text. I remember I had this one guy. He had put all these great things about me in a text. And I was like, you know what? I can't ignore that, because to me, when somebody likes you, that's a blessing, because they could not like you. You understand what I'm saying? So I felt out of respect, I should come at him with appreciation that you have this for me, but it's just not going to work. And these are the reasons why. Our personalities, we clash, blah, 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 blah. And out of that text, he had respect for me. Now, I didn't give him a phone call or anything of that nature. He didn't ask for one, but if he would have called, I would have answered the phone. We could have talked about it, but it's just out of respect for another human, because I never know when I'm going to need him. I never know if I'm going to change my mind. You just never know. You never want to burn bridges with people, because you never know when you'll see them later on in life. It's just
I also think that men, everything you're saying is more of a romanticized thing. It is extremely hard. Like I said, you have to, y'all are women. I understand that and I respect that, but we experience women. It's completely different on our end. I have done what you have said plenty of times. Do you know what communication with a woman in the closure sense? Do you know what it brings you? Listen, we say these things like they're jokes. It's not really a joke. Women have to have the last word. You will not break up with a woman in text and that be the last you hear from her. My door got knocked on at 1:00 in the morning because of sending that text that you're talking about. That
Your door
closure.
can get knocked on by ghosting too. What does that have to do with anything?
Mm-hmm.
No,
I would say more than likely it would get knocked on with the ghosting.
No, what I will say, this is what I will say, is that, and this is what I like to Naz's point. I am the type of man I've always been, especially as I've gotten older. You let the person know how you feel at the moment of the infraction, and especially if you want to be safe as a man, because I'm really thinking on that type of stuff right now. Listen, every dude in the panel, we can ask, have you broken up with a girl and she put her hands on you immediately after? Like literally just start swinging?
You can if you text it.
And she'll show up and start swinging. Like, y'all don't understand it.
So, but you're acting like she can't still do the same thing if you ghost her. If she knows where you live, it's going to be, that's not going to stop that.
What I'm saying is that you owe an explanation for whatever it was at the moment of the infraction. And if she inquires about why you are not there, I told you. That's the only thing I started doing post like 25 years old. I already told you what you did wrong. I'm not dealing with that no more. We are not. I was like, thank you for everything. I will not call you, blow you up, take any more of your time. Now, if she shows up in my house, I'm calling the cops. Right? So it's extremely hard to deal with women when the situation is her being rejected or you telling her no. I advise men to stay safe. I sat there as a roommate, and this is personal for me. My roommate, big burly football player, played one season with the Redskins, right? Big dude with dreads. Literally calls me like, hey, I don't want her to do nothing crazy. Come over here. We thought we were safe. You got a witness, right? He's leaving the crib. She's beating his back. You're not leaving. You're not leaving. And the second I got a suitcase, he got a suitcase. She just kind of does that thing where you break down and she looked like she turned it into The Grudge, runs herself into the fucking wall and makes her nose bleed, calls the cops, and they take his ass. Even though I said I'm a witness, nobody hit anybody. This is the stuff we see and we deal with. We're not playing with y'all.
Like that's you dealing with a crazy chick. Come on, she was crazy.
That's not
that's the average.
That's
the average chick.
No, not when you're grown.
When a woman is getting broken up with or rejected, this is who most of y'all turn into.
What?
I'm trying to.
You think I'm running myself into the wall? Boy, bye.
Okay.
I say that all women are crazy.
My husband says that too. But I don't think it's crazy. Just say it's something that you don't understand.
So, no, we understand it. It'd be crazy.
Go ahead, Ina.
So I think, okay. Because to trigger Mike's point, right? Like to the men that I've had discussions with, this isn't out of the ordinary, right? Most men have at least one or two of these experiences. I think sometimes when we hear most women or a lot of women, we tend to personalize it. So like he's not saying us specifically that we would move this way, right? But when we take ourselves out of it, the likelihood of that happening is high enough and has happened frequent enough for them to assume that a lot of women do it, right? And I think we need to have that conversation with open and honest integrity, because otherwise we run the risk of just like negating a lot of men's experiences. And there's too many of them with, again, at least one or two of these experiences to call cap on it. So,
well, I'm just saying, I know I can't honestly have that conversation in that regard, just because, like he said, as men, I guess they're going to deal with a whole different side. And I guess it also depends on the woman that they are engaging with to begin with.
Yeah.
On the other hand, that is not something that I've ever experienced personally or have seen. So that's why I'll say probably on my end, my viewpoint is going to be, no, that's not majority of women. But like you said, on their experiences, they may have seen that frequent enough to make that generalization to say most women are probably like that.
And it happens at the moment of rejection. Let me tell you how deep this goes, though. In every male group chat, there's somebody that's going to hit the group chat like, all right, fellas, group meeting, like, you know, you'll start seeing some kind of alert, like everybody pay attention. And every once in a while, it'll be, I'm breaking up with this chick. What do I do? It's to the point where we have this down to a science in my group chat, going back to college. You have to, this is why either in if you got a Samsung, I don't know what it's called, a secure folder on one of these apps, you have to save the text messages between you and whatever girl you're messing with. Never delete them. As a man, that is your evidence, because you're just going to get a subpoena or some kind of crazy allegation. You're like, what? All because you rejected her and you broke up with her. So the first thing, I'm about to break up with Chick, where your text message is at, remove them from the secure folder, zip them in a file, and send them to all the homies just in case they get deleted from your phone. Like, we got this down to a science, I'm telling you.
So I just want to say, breakup ghosting is also a science. When when you break up ghost, you don't just simply ghost. You just start to kind of disappear to where she is okay with the relationship disappearing completely. And in most cases, if you do it right, she will break up with you. And
you smart, boy. You smart.
And if you have done it, if you have done it right, because you can't, as a man.
That's me.
I'm not going to run the risk of messing up anything that I currently have going on because of the unpredictability of some women. So I'm going to let you terminate the relationship by me just kind of pulling myself back. And you don't ghost completely. You don't go zero contact.
How do you do that if you're living together?
No.
Wait.
I'm not living.
You can still do it.
Listen.
But that's the number one rule. Make her, if you want a safe breakup, make her think it was her idea. Go ahead.
So the fadeaway is never going to sound like it's her idea. The fadeaway inspires just as much crazy as ghosting or like an abrasive breakup. I know it makes men feel better and feel safer. I understand that, but I have seen way too many women fly off the hinges with the fadeaway. It's not. It doesn't work. It doesn't.
Like, I don't know. For me, it's about a 90% success rate. It's hard for me to say it don't work when it do.
Think about it this way, though, AP. Most men will hear about this, not seek guidance, try it out on their own, pre-plan it on their own, and it will go the way Inaz is saying. If you don't have, my group chat, you might struggle. You might struggle to do it. But these dudes will give you detailed instructions on what to do.
Well,
it's masterful.
I think the level of ghosting depends on the longevity of the relationship. If you just met this person and y'all ain't really invested like that, then what do you owe this person? What does she owe you? What do you owe them? Now, if y'all have spent some time, like 6 months to a year and so on, okay, those are real relationships that you should like man up, have the conversation and be like, hey, this is what it is, right? Which is fine. But if y'all in the dating stage or y'all just talking and this, that, and third, y'all ain't established nothing, y'all ain't really done much, bro, bye.
You know what though, Harrison? Let me try to allude to what I've with my experience. What I've noticed is that I've never had a problem breaking away from a situation where sex wasn't involved. So we have to assume that sex is what makes them crazy. Especially if you're putting it down right, and you can see the smile that's on Mistaken's face right now. She like, I guess so. I guess that's for real. Yes. So one of the things that I can conclude is that we are the givers, they are the takers, and when you're leaving them, it feels like you took something from them. Their virtue, you took a lot of time. It's like you literally took time off their clock, and they got nothing for it in the end. I think bad relationships make women realize that I gave you value while your value was increasing. Right? So I can understand from that standpoint why women are more likely to turn crazy if you take too much of their time up and try to fade away from them. But either way, you still got to protect yourself if that's not a relationship you want.
You know what, Mike? High five. That was a good one.
Oh, okay. Every once in a while, I'll be halfway on y'all side. Halfway, not all the way.
I think that sums it up. That's pretty much it.
But I think before it even gets to that point where the craziness happened, I think it goes back to what Inaz was saying in the very beginning is that stuff wasn't established as the foundation from the very beginning. And so if you're allowing stuff to slide or things like that, and it goes on for a period of time, and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
It's not fair. So that's part of why I was saying it's not fair, nor is it correct in the fact that you didn't uphold your end by being honest, or vice versa, whoever it is, but by being honest up front about what it was to begin with. So then the woman's acting crazy because she doesn't even know where it's probably coming from. Like, what are you talking about? You never even said anything to me about it. Now, the opposite can be true. It could be that you have let her know, but because you continue to deal with the behavior without giving consequences immediately when it first happened, then it's like, oh, now you're trying to act brand new. You're trying to act different. Now it becomes a problem. You know what I'm saying? So I truly believe if you set your standards of expectation of what you're going to deal with and not deal with from the very beginning, you don't need to ghost anybody. You can straight up like, listen, I already told you I don't deal with this. And you did it after I told you, I'm out. At that point, there is no arguing. There isn't, because I let you know straight up from the beginning.
I want to add an important caveat to that, because I agree with you, Mistaken, but I find a lot of times some men will communicate with women the way that they communicate with men. And so what seems like clear communication to them is not being received as clear communication. So I think it's important to speak with women like women so that there's no mixed signals about it, if that makes sense.
So my question is, as a man, I guess I'm asking for you guys, how would a man know how to speak to a woman as a woman if you understand what I'm saying? If he's not a woman, just like for me, I'm going to speak to you the way that I speak to you, and I'm assume that you understand what I'm saying, but I may be using language that I know you and Shan may get, but they might have no clue.
So I guess like examples in this case would be really important, right? So if a man says something along the lines of like, hey, I didn't like that, right? Like, I'm going to use the example that you gave earlier of your husband saying, I don't like when you walk in the house talking on the phone, right? You could say that and it just sounds like a preference. But when a man says, hey, it feels really disrespectful when you walk in the house and you're not greeting the people that live in this house, that gets received very differently, right? The moment he says that feels disrespectful, this is now, if you care about that man, that is top priority. Like, oh no, I don't want my man to feel disrespected. So I'm going to do my best to correct this quickly and swiftly, right? You might mess up because it's a habit, but it comes up, but like, hey, like, I just didn't like that. There isn't like the emphasis on the importance of it, right? And if you leave that room for interpretation, then it's you get pushback like, oh, I didn't think it was a big deal, right? And that's what I'm talking about men, the way that men communicate with women. You need to have that extra layer of clarity, because we don't always connect those dots of like, hey, you perceive this as disrespect. Right? Whereas amongst men, if you say that to each other because y'all understand each other's language, you understand, oh, that was disrespectful. He doesn't have to vocalize that to you because you come from a similar like wavelength. Women don't have that wavelength. And so if you're not being super clear, you leave room for interpretation. And where you leave room for interpretation, you leave room for continued disrespect.
I think that one of the issues too is I think somebody I think blunt communication is the best this whole thing, I'm a have a person string along and eventually they'll win. You're just making it, like you said, it's just making the process worse. I think that what happens is we'll have these placeholder situations. You know, you don't want to be with this person. You keep stringing them along. You wasted more and more time, kind of like what Mike said earlier. And that is when you go and get the crazy, because she feels like you knew this a long time ago and you just strung me along all this time, because it's been building up for a minute. And so nobody likes to waste time. I told y'all in the beginning, there's nothing like wasted time. Don't ever waste people's time. And that to me is the most important part. Like if we're in it and we're communicating and everything is great, at some point when things are getting shaky, you need to start communicating that things, look, my feelings starting to change a little bit. Like maybe we need to try something different, do a like intervention. Try, and then if it doesn't work, like, yo, this ain't working for me, I'm gonna be honest with you, because that's the only, it's gotta be you gotta communicate effectively. Like we communicate effectively in everything we do except for relationships, and I just don't understand.
Yeah, mistaken. You think relationships are fair?
No, life isn't fair.
Yeah, so why would you sit there and say that's not fair when you know darn well relationships and life ain't fair? Relationships ain't never gonna be fair.
No, well, yeah, but I think there are certain things that you can do to, you know, make situations better. So first thing before I get to that, Doug Will took the words out of my mouth. He said direct, yes, blunt, not necessarily. Yeah.
Okay, maybe.
Yeah.
I think you should do
definitely both. Because blunt can be taken a certain way too that may go left. Because I remember having a conversation before I was leaving one of my other schools with a principal about, you know, certain things or whatever, because I am a very direct person. And he made the comment that, like, I know that, you know, you are upfront with people and you're blunt, but you know, that I know you're from New York, like that kind of thing. And, you know, people may not necessarily read it the right way. And I'm like, what are you talking? You know what I'm saying? Like, what are you talking about in regards to that? So I think there's a difference between being blunt and being direct. You don't want to be misinterpreted as being disrespectful. And I think it can be interpreted as being disrespectful. But in terms of what you were saying about things being fair, no, I do not think that life is fair all the time. But I also think that you should strive to be fair as an individual as best you can. So if I would expect you to explain something to me or what have you, then on my end, I need to be doing the same thing to you. I can't expect you to do something that I wouldn't even hold myself accountable for.
Well, I disagree with that slightly, because how women move and how men move are different. Like,
but the standard isn't.
No, the standard is definitely different.
No, if you expect me to communicate to you, now the way I communicate to you may be different, but the idea behind the communication is to make something clear in terms of our standards or our boundaries, right? Because that's what we were talking about. So the way I may go about making my standards or my boundaries clear to you in the way that I communicate that may look a little different, but the premise of it is still the same from your end or mine. You may be blunt, but I may be more subtle about it, but we're still trying to communicate the same thing about what our boundaries are. That's what I mean.
I understand.
So I don't necessarily agree with that, right? Because I think there's what's fair and then there's what's right. Fair tends to be really subjective. And I think that's where people kind of get into muddy waters. Whereas I think if we focus on being more righteous and less about being fair, then we give better opportunities for our relationships to thrive, romantic and otherwise, right? So, like, I have this thing that, like, not everything that's uncomfortable is bad for you, right? Sometimes receiving feedback or criticism doesn't feel good, but it's the right thing to do because that's the right thing for a relationship. Work, romantic, friendships, whatever relationship, right? It's the right thing to do. It's the same difference between being blunt and being direct, right? There's a certain level of respect that differentiates the two, because you could say whatever you want, and like what comes to mind with blunt is like, I'm just being brutally honest. The truth doesn't have to be brutal, right? It could be uncomfortable, that's fine, but it doesn't have to be brutal, especially when you're communicating it to somebody that you say you care about, right? The directness is just that there's clarity involved without all of the unnecessary amounts of, room for disrespect.
I think that when the term brutal gets used, it just depends on the person who's receiving those words. Because oftentimes, like if you hear certain people say certain things, it might seem brutal, but like depending on how that person receives it, like if you say certain direct things to somebody that's from New York, you're gonna get a very different response. Versus if you say that same response to say somebody in like Alabama, some people in Alabama, you're going to, depending on that person's internal disposition to what is being said, something that you would consider brutal in one area or one person is not going to be brutal to another person, because this is
So,
my experience. In my
so
experience, even being tactful and trying to, speak in a language that a woman would understand and be more willing to take and receive, once she understands what the message is, depending on how she's feeling in that moment, it still could possibly induce the same thing you were trying to prevent by actually trying to communicate in a way that she understands. Once you understand what the message is, how you going to respond to it is how you're going to respond for it. Whether I said, you go on a job interview and you be like, hey, you did a great interview, you had a good time. However, you can't get the job. Or if you said, hey, you did a fantastic job, but I don't think you're going to be a good fit. Those words, in some people's mind, feel dramatically different, but the results is the same. Once you realize I did not get the job, that this ain't going the way that I want, you can have a very negative reaction to that whole entire situation.
so that goes to what I was saying, right? Like, the truth can be uncomfortable, and the person receiving that needs to be the thing that they navigate through. When people say brutal honesty, it's the deliverer of the message and not the receiver. That there is no regard for that person's feelings in the way that they deliver the message. So in that same example that you gave, that would be like the interviewer being like, no, this was a trash interview, like it wasn't good, you're not getting the job, please leave. Versus like, hey, thank you for your time, these are the reasons we won't be moving forward with you. However you want to phrase that second one, right? That is somebody who is being direct versus somebody being brutally honest. Brutally honest usually comes with, your feelings are not going to get in the way of the way that I want to tell you this message. Brutally honest is never, I've never heard somebody on the receiving end explain what somebody said is brutally honest. It's always the person who's delivering the message who's like, well, I'm just being brutally honest. That translates to, I don't care about your feelings, I'm going to tell you whatever way that I want to, you take it how. I think that's really irresponsible in the way that we handle people.
I think brutal honesty sometimes is the best policy, sometimes. And sometimes and maybe that's coming from a male perspective, because sometimes if you're not brutally honest with some brothers, your relationship or your interactions with them sometimes get stagnant or they don't go anywhere. And sometimes brothers won't move to do things that they're supposed to do unless you're brutally honest. So I can sit here and admit my bias, probably being a guy. I prefer brutal, honest. Let the feelings come, whatever. Because the thing is I want to get what the true meat and potatoes of the situation is. And if you're sitting here just trying to be tactful and try to do this, that, and the third, which is nice, it's cool that you want to care about my feelings, but I want to get down to the bottom of what it is that you're talking about instead of us dancing around this nonsense. Like, I think that also speaks to your point of that too many people are dancing around trying to give the, the roundabout way of trying to say XYZ instead of just being like, rip the bandage off. Like, it's not going to feel good. You might not even survive the conversation. And I don't think you should always rip the bandage off like that. But like, I think there is some good value to being brutally honest so that you can get rid of a lot of the fluff that people are accustomed to feeling on a day-to-day basis, in my opinion.
Let's do anybody else have anything to say about that? Let's do the super chat real fast.
All right. Pull them up. Inaj, you can read it.
I think it just says get the likes up. Am I reading that right?
Yep.
Dale
Dale Matthews.
Member for 10 months.
Woo woo.
O'Shea Linux, the hobbyist, $5. Smother the woman the woman with too much attention, and she will leave you because you seem insecure.
Oh, he's referring to how to break up, have her break up with you.
Yeah.
No, I think this was the conversation about like treating certain women like a fan.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into the meat and potatoes because we are running overtime.
We know how you feel about that.
I'm gonna let both videos go in together, okay? Because they're kind of like on the same subject. Okay, so you gotta watch 2 videos.
The longer you wait for the future you want, the less time you have to spend in it. And that, for me, is exactly what it is. So you waiting to experience.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Y'all see that was the wrong.
That's that you've been given
that's
to
the wrong
share.
one.
My bad. Hold on. I got 2 things going in the background. Okay, so let me do this.
I would love a relationship that makes my life better than it is. I have no interest in being in a relationship to be in a relationship. Mm-hmm. The truth is that, like, I'm a rare breed. So, like, there might not be a match that's a rare breed for a while.
Oh, no.
But there is also...
I'm sorry, that's going and then this one.
High earning women are the devil. They're more likely to leave compared to a woman who's financially dependent on a man. So those things I'm not saying are not true. Here's the part of the puzzle they miss. A lot of men, what they do is they take their foot off the pedal when they're with a high earning woman. If, because she's earning, you are now not investing in her, but that same man would go to another broke woman and give her the world, then she's getting a low end of the deal. Like usually women still take majority of domestic chores, especially when it comes to children. She's going to have a dual burden. The woman that's a good woman who's earning and doing her own things and looking after you, she doesn't ask, but doesn't mean she doesn't deserve you. But if you maintain your masculinity and you maintain the same level of treatment you would give her if she was broke, rather than relying on her income, you can maintain that relationship really well. But men treat women who earn better as men. They treat them like men. Treat a woman like a man, she sees you like a girl. She will no longer be sexually interested in you.
So that was oh my God. Jesus help me.
You know,
she has very good perspectives sometimes.
So I can understand what she's saying a little bit. Now, yeah. I think what she's trying to say is it's okay to have a high earning woman. Okay. Mm-hmm. But she still wants to be treated like a lady. You know, mm-hmm. She still wants to be treated no different from if she wasn't a high earning woman. She doesn't want the short end of the stick. She still wants you mm-hmm. to show up as the man in the household. Does that make sense?
Not only does it make sense, Shan, this is where we're kind of this is where we kind of have to give a little bit of grace to men. Here's why. For every action, there's an equal by opposite reaction. All right. In physics, that is true. And also in the world of human interaction, that is now proving to be true. When a woman puts a certain amount of energy into one area of her life that does not have to do with children, family, or catering to a man, we're starting to notice that it instinctively deactivates certain parts of a man to do for a woman. So the best part of what she said was, well, you would give this other woman blank, blank, and blank, because her dependency on him in certain ways activates that in him. right? So you have to understand a man is not going to be super endearing to a woman he never sees because she's working, right? So that's the only part I ask for is like a little bit of grace to say that a woman's focus on work, she's kind of doing this to herself. That's all.
Well, she didn't say what the job itself was. I think the message was more so the earning, the amount of money. If she out earns her partner, that partner then falls back on what he may potentially do for her because it's like, oh, you got it, versus the other person who don't have it, and so it makes you give them more. So from that, I can understand that, because even in conversations that we've had before, where it's like, if a person, and not just a man, but I think if a person is presenting as if they got it, then it's like, all right, you got it. And I would say more so like, even with because I think one time it was a conversation one time when Trill was on here, that he explained that if it's something that a woman is doing, a man will automatically fall back if you're taking the lead on it. He's like, all right, whatever, you want to act like that, or you want to be the man, I'm gonna let you do that, and they'll fall back.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's kind of what she's explaining. Just because I have money still doesn't mean that I don't want you to treat me like a woman who doesn't have the money. And I think Inaz had also explained before, like in being in Muslim, right, that men, regardless of how much money the man, how much money the woman makes, that the man is still supposed to take care of her.
I think
that's an established role.
Yeah, so that's correct. And the reason that those women can do that is because a man's value is not just in his wallet, right? And I think the danger of this conversation is that if your wallet is not bigger than mine, then you don't have any perceived value, right? That's really like the problem with like these boss babes, right? You have to have money in order to show me that you have value. That's really problematic, because masculinity is not wrapped up in their wallet, because provision is a whole lot of other things on top of financial provision. And we forget that when we get into these conversations a lot of the time, right? Because that man might not have the same money as you, but he has a different perspective than you. He could offer you some valuable insight on how to navigate, your world if he's familiar with it, or how to navigate certain business conversations. His network could be value to you. Like, there are a whole lot of other things where that man could be valuable to a woman who is high earning, but that dollar amount gets in the way of a lot of women seeing that. And I think that, because I agree with Trigger Mike, that lady has a lot of really great takes. This was not one of her better ones.
And let me say to kind of offset that and add to it, think about all of the narratives that women started on their own because they make money. Independent woman, I get my own. A man does not have to do anything for me. What you women have created without the help of men is a culture of confusion about how we are supposed to approach things with you. It's all confusion. I struggled with this as a husband, right? Because women will say these things out of their mouths. You'll hear them talking about it with their friends. And you literally are sitting there like, well, this is the moment. So now, because I have a wife and a daughter, I usually keep 5 $100 bills. I gave my last one last week, so I got to go get some more. I usually keep 5 $100 bills in my wallet. And my wife is a multiple 6-figure earner, got her own business, just like me. We are matched on every level, right? I don't need to give her money to go to the nail shop and to go out with my daughter. But she'll say something like, oh my God, look at these nails. We'll be sitting there with the kid. And even a woman with that much resources, for me to pull out one of them hundreds and say, you and a baby girl go to the nail shop. He'll be just as giddy. Baby girl, you ready to go to the nail shop? And I had to learn that I have to break through. It takes time to break through all of this confusion that we've made in society to say she's still a woman. She's still my woman. And these gestures matter. It takes time, but I got to tell women is that y'all have done a bulk of the legwork deactivating the instinct of men to do that for you. So we got to reclaim that in society.
And let me just piggyback on what Mike said. I love that, Mike, because you're right. If she has her own money, it does feel good to know that my man is pampering me in some type of way. But I would even say this: when you do that, you'll be amazed at what you get back from her, because now she wants to pamper you. You know what I'm saying? And she may go above and beyond.
I'm gonna make sure I get
for
mine.
you. If she's the right woman, I'm a giver. If I see that you're giving me something, I'm gonna try to double. I'm like, oh, that's so sweet. But I'm gonna give him I'm gonna be thinking about you on another. I'm not trying to one up you or anything, but I'm just saying because I'm a giver, you know. So it's just men, if you're dating a woman and she happens to make more money than you, just treat her like a lady still. Don't treat you are the man, just like Ina said. You provide so many other things in that household besides finances. So I'm sure she appreciates you for that because she's in that relationship. But it's okay to pamper her, and I promise you, if she's anything like me, she's gonna give it back to you, give you way much more than you've given her. That's just how I roll. So,
and ladies, because we gotta talk to the ladies too. When you get a man, start toning down the independent woman speech. It is really confusing. It is extremely confusing because even our natural instinct, first off, is to do for our women. We want to see you smile. We want to give you things and know we did it. That provision is actually biological, that we get like fulfillment out of watching ourselves provide for everyone underneath our care or or under our roof. That gives us pride. It gives me fulfillment. That's what makes me happy. Not these cars, not anything else, not clothes, not sneakers. That is what makes me happy. So it is extremely confusing to hear so much of the world's rhetoric out there in a house where you're like, well, does she not want me to give her money? Does she get fulfillment out of buying things from herself? And now we know that that's not true. You don't. It's just been taught to you over the years to say such things because it makes women in a group feel good about what they've done with their life, but not individually. Y'all are still women.
Yeah, I agree. Women are still women, but you got to add credence to the fact that, like you said, when you spend enough time doing something for so long, why would you be able to easily turn that off after you had spent excessive amount of time doing certain things? Like,
talk about the women?
Yeah, women. Like, why would they stop taking ownership or taking leadership or being independent or doing these things they've been doing by themselves?
Real quickly now, I just want to add this to Harrison. So Harrison, this is the question I got for women now on panels. Can women? That's a question for you, or question for the ladies. Most women at work can pay their own bills, right? Do they want to? Okay, that's why, Harris. That's the answer.
No, I understand, but you have to understand, like you say, you should give man grace on this. The simple fact of the matter remains is that, yeah, I can treat you like a normal woman, but you're not a normal woman. You have habits and skills and propensities to do certain things that you have spent a significant amount of time doing. And then I want you to come home and turn that off. Now, granted, like it's not necessarily,
but I do got another rebuttal.
I'm not saying that it's impossible, because women love sit there and say, well, I don't give this energy to everybody. The right guy will make me make this adjustment. And if I like you, I'll do all of these things. But the simple fact of the matter is that many women, what they say and what they do be two different things. They would say that, you don't need money. You don't need all of these things. You don't need to make this much money. But too many times they have shown you that's a lie. If she feels like you're beneath you, she's beneath you, or you're beneath her, she's going to continue to keep the same energy she keeps everywhere else and still be crying about it, talking about why this. Listen, Men and women, we are our worst enemies sometimes. The simple fact of the matter is how women have been able to adjust to these new changes and get income and this, that, and the third. It came with a very different issue, just like HVAC. HVAC gave us the comforts of our days and our times, but it also jacked up the ozone. So sometimes some of the good things that we have in life, that you can be able to take care of yourself, be independent, not have the necessary need to depend on a man. Now, when you're trying to interact and try to figure out some level of independence, it's going to be hard for you to make that adjustment oftentimes when you make a certain amount of money.
So I think it's so disingenuous, only because,
You said what?
like I said, I think that's so disingenuous,
Why?
only because women, as much as like we talk about how women say one thing and do another, the one thing women have been consistent with is like, if that woman really sees that guy as that guy, she's going to do everything she can to keep him. Like that has been consistent across women. There might be an adjustment period because for any human being, habits are hard to break. But the reason that women turn it off when they come home for the guy that they love is to keep him, because they are well aware of the fact that if they continue with that, and let's use Trigger Mike as an example, because he just spoke about what he does for his wife. If his wife decided to turn around and start to have that independent woman conversation, he's out. And she knows that. And so she knows that in order to keep this man that she thinks is a good man, a good husband, a good father, a good provider, all of this stuff, has good character, she's going to adjust so that she keeps him, so that she's not without a man like that. Because if we're honest, a lot of women feel like that type of man is very rare, right? So women have been very consistent on that. What they haven't been consistent on is that the men that they treat are like that guy, when really they're just trying to convince themselves so that they're able to stay in a relationship, not the relationship, right? That's where I understand a lot of men's confusion around it. But women are very capable of turning it off with some grace, because again, habits are hard to change. But women are able, with time and the right amount of direction, women are absolutely able to switch it up for the right man. The problem is, a lot of men have also bought into the same fallacy that women have, that their value is their wallet. And so as a man, if you're not able to provide value past a wallet, you're not providing that woman with opportunity to respect you past the dollar amount that you bring into the household. So we have men and women operating from the same place, frustrated about the same thing, and trying to navigate relationships with each other when both of them don't really fully buy into it.
Well, I think it's very important that what you mentioned is time, right? How much time should I be willing to give you grace for you to learn how to turn it off? Because you talked about this whole entire show about building the foundation and setting the boundaries and doing all that stuff out the gate. If you've been spending 20 or 30 years of your life doing a certain type of thing, what is the likelihood of you being able to switch that switch?
Well, let me ask you this. Just suppose how, if you flip that, how, I guess, is treat others the way you want to be treated. How many times do you expect grace? Is the amount of time that you should give her as well. Now, if you don't expect any grace at all as you're trying to learn and adjust and adapt, then cool, you don't deal with it at all. But if you would want somebody to give you the grace as you're trying to learn and adapt, then I think that's how much grace you need to extend to the person that you're with, as long as they're genuinely trying to make the change. Like I said, with my example with my husband, with me coming, on the phone through the door, I had been doing that for a long time. But when he came to me and said, I just think that's disrespectful. I don't think, I don't want you doing that. Give me the first 10 minutes. Those first 10 minutes belong to me when you get home. So I started off because I was being very conscious of it. But again, old habits will come back from time to time. So sometimes I might have came in the phone because I forgot, or it might have been something from work or what have you. And he'd be like, you was on the phone, and I'm like, oh, my bad. You know what I'm saying? So he gave me grace because he know it wasn't intentional, because I was really trying to make changes. So I think as long as the person is making the change and you see that growth, then go ahead and give them grace as they continue to grow in that area.
So that was what I was going to say, is that the level of time that you give to somebody to change should be equal, as a general rule, should be equal to the amount of effort that they're putting into changing. Right? If you're seeing actual progress, that should be met with the same amount of time that they're given, right? If you're not seeing any progress at all, any change at all, you really should not give it that much time, because they're not taking it that seriously, right? And I think sometimes when we have these conversations, we forget the fact that, like, this is somebody we're supposed to care about. If you care about this person who's communicating this thing to you, you want to change for them. There's that desire, like the same way that Trigger Mike was talking about how men innately want to provide, women innately want to please their partner, right? So, like, if that isn't happening, then we need to have a conversation about the nature of the actual relationship. Do these people actually feel this way about each other? And yes, feelings are fleeting and yada, 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 but they're motivating factors for the things that make relationships function.
Yeah, that sounds great. But grace is given to people. People give grace when they want to get grace. And the thing in your example, Ms. Taken, you're already invested in that relationship, right? You have already grown the enough time for you to be attached to this person, attracted to this person. You have already been down this road long enough for you to be willing to have built up a bank for you to even have a level of grace. The problem is that depending on your attraction level to that person, depending on your willingness to take a risk or be invested in this person, you might not even have time for grace to be an idea to be extended to you, right? Because the thing is if you're just meeting this woman out of nowhere and she has the same thing as you, right? Y'all both got the same amount of money, and you just met her, and she's got this propensity to be independent and this, that, and the third. It's up to that man to decide how much grace he want to get, just like it's up to that woman how much grace you want to give this man before she just be like, I'm out, I don't have to do nothing with this. And Mike, would you mind talking about your personal situation? Who makes more, you or your wife?
All inclusive, me.
Okay, so you make more than your wife. You still fit the bill of what most women would want. I want him to make more than me, and I also want to be able to help him where I can. But this woman is still looking up to this man to some degree. To her, he's physically attractive. What? He's socially attractive, right? And then also he's financially attractive. So he's already doing these things to, yes, she's going to want to make those decisions as far as, you know what, this is a rare breed of dude, right? Anybody that makes X amount of dollars, most people would consider to be a rare breed of person, even though people are saying people are making more money now, this, that, and the third. But
I'll say this though, Harrison. I'll say this though. It wasn't always this way.
I understand it wasn't always this way, but there's certain women that understand the value of a man besides his wallet. If you don't have a woman
that's true. I agree with that, but that also depends on what that man is putting forth. If he's putting out that the money is the thing that is the most important, then that's what she's going to see. But if he is showing those other aspects of what provision is or what protection is or any of those other things, then the money doesn't matter as much, especially if she has her own. And I think that's where, a lot of us like get mixed up in terms of the relationship. Is a lot of times when we're talking about provision, 9 times out of 10, provision equals finances. we're not necessarily respecting the other aspects of what provision means. So that's why when we're on these panels, you hear a lot of like, you know, I make sure I out earn. It's like this competition aspect or what have you. So I think if you begin to focus on developing those other aspects of what provision means, that she will begin to see, even though he got money, I know I can't live without this. I need him for this, because those are aspects that money cannot provide.
And that's most of the stuff in the relationship, mind you. Money actually ends up last on the list when when you actually plan out your family and what, you know, whatever those therapists do when they make a woman, when she's trying to divorce a man, and be like, okay, that's fine. Be upset. Write out a list of everything that your husband does. And
even for me, like I had thought of my husband and I, we were talking before. The truth of the matter is, if we broke up today, neither one of our lifestyles would change dramatically. Like when we purchased our house based on if something should ever happen, who, you know, we want to make sure that either one of us, if we went down to one income, can at least pay the mortgage. You know what I'm saying? So things like that. So in that regard, financially, I don't need him and he doesn't need me to continue to live independently. It's those intangible things that I know, like I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm independent, I can pay my own bills, but there are aspects of him that I know I just can't live without, because those things became very important to me in my relationship.
Well, so, I would say this, because that's not the way I even look at it. Me and my wife, like, you know, at this point, we are, you don't even need to talk about money, right? But the funny part, when I'm cautioning my sisters, I caution my sisters-in-law, I caution my wife against speaking like that, because sometimes they'll get on their high horse and start speaking this independent woman stuff at 4th of July events and things. And I'm saying, it don't matter what the one thing I caution women on doing, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Robert Smith, P. Diddy, all of these men, the worst part about it is that women think that these men, the number one thing about them is that they're rich. That's not the number one thing about them. Most of these men, like Mark Zuckerberg, lost the biggest amount of money anyone has ever lost in a day. His net worth went down $70 million in one day. I'm sorry, billion in one day, right? Like last year in one day. But nobody blinked an eye. He didn't blink an eye. His resourcefulness, he is the money. That you've heard the saying, put me in a jungle, I'll come out with a mink coat. This is the type, this is his drive, his ability to lead and produce and be resourceful. That is really the richness of a man. That's the wealth of a man. And the reason I caution women on saying, well, I wouldn't need you because I could do it on my own, is if your worth is a job, you can lose that goddamn job. Like, you see what I'm saying? So I always tell women and my sisters-in-law that everything you can build, or no matter what you can do for yourself, you could do it faster with a man, right? And no matter what. So that's the way I want women to go into the new era, the new eras of their life thinking. Stop looking at what you can never, like, I look at single people like, listen, I know y'all saying it's okay to be single. It's not, but you cannot build anything as fast as a unit can. You can't. Your children could never have as much support, financial or parent support, by yourself as they can in a unit. So, you know, I just want people to start thinking about it that way, because units are what they own most of the global wealth. Their children are the ones that do the best. So I just want everybody to look at it from a total production standpoint, rather than just, oh, well, I could do this all on my own. Not as fast. You can't. No.
I just wanted to address Isaiah. So no, I don't think that a man should stop protecting women and children. That was what I was saying. Those are intangible things. That doesn't cost any money to do that. So that was what I was getting at. Is finances important? Yes, you need finances to live. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say, oh, that doesn't matter at all. It absolutely does. But is that the primary thing that you're going to need to make a relationship sustainable and work, especially if the woman is making her own money? I contended that would not matter as much. That's not going to be your number one priority at that point. If you're able to live your life in terms of financially, if you're able to live your life the same way, whether you have a husband or not, just from a financial independent standpoint, then he is definitely going to have something else to bring to the table that makes it worth staying. And that's what I was saying, is that's where those intangibles become more important when you're dealing with a high earning.
And Harrison, you right about something though. I think it was either you or Inaz that said most women have no idea that that's where a man's value actually is. And the part that really upsets me is that I talk the way that I do, trying to get people to realize that exact thing. Stop bringing money into the topic about relationships. You see what I'm saying? Yes, we can understand that money is important if we're talking about, because the worst part about it is it's not even looked at the right way. Women are talking about money. Most women are talking about money from the terms of what a man can buy them what they want, not his ability to sustain, maybe a child or two or whatever like that. They're looking at it like, how much can this dude splurge on me, which is absolutely immature and a bad way to look at it. I'm telling women now, look at the dude, the way that he will progress. What are his life goals, his characteristics? Stop thinking that formal schooling is the only way men make money. It's actually not the way black men make money at all. The richest ones never set foot on anybody's college campus, right? So yeah, I just want people to be more realistic about the value, the actual value that men have. And really, in the terms of family, we need to start looking at it the way other ethnic groups look at it. Your actual value is in human capital, not money, right? How many figures can we produce that'll put back into this thing, this engine that we're building, right? So that's the way I look at it. Just saying.
Yeah, I personally think that as much as the conversation about money gets annoying, the reality is if you want a certain amount of kids in a certain amount of area, the quality of your life is affected by you either A, both having money, or you as the man have enough money to be able to do some of the things that you're trying to do. So there is a practicality to what women are saying, but I agree with you that most women are looking at excess instead of actually necessity. So, but unfortunately, as much as we know, and that's the problem, only a few of us really put credence in the character of a person, because oftentimes is that reason why a lot of these guys that got a lot of money still get joked is because their perceived status or respectability or their character. There's some brothers that got a whole bunch of money, and like Miss Taken said, all they got is their wallet. They don't know how to talk. They don't know how to interact with people. They're not resourceful in other ways that people would find attractive or helpful in some ways. But it's just like, knowing that the relationships or building a relationship with a woman is going to be unfair regardless, because you're going to have to shoulder a lot more of certain things even before you even seal the deal and marry this woman, right?
Yeah.
It just the nature.
I'm usually very critical of that men can't speak thing, because there's only a certain type of woman that kind of really deserves the super articulate man. That's my opinion. You see what I'm saying? If you're a college professor, you got to take a guy to the governor's ball. Yes, you want to be married to a trigger mic type dude that can spark the whole room up in conversation. I get that. But some of these ladies have no education either. Okay, so they don't deserve a social butterfly themselves. They should be fine with what they get. I'm just going traditionally to what the characteristics were. If a man is a good man, he's able to sustain what he does have. He goes to work every day. He's kind to you. That dude deserves a shot before we put all these extras on it. But there is one point I wanted to make before I forget. And I think it's very disingenuous to what that lady in the video was saying. She said that men take their foot off of the gas. That is another That is another thing that's actually very disingenuous for women to say, and it's not understanding the totality of what's actually happening. I want men to put aside our pride for 2 seconds and realize that mothers have always traditionally been known as the primary caregivers of children. This is what all the way up from when they were staying home more, or the family was there, up until they started working. So now I want fathers to start calling themselves the secondary caregivers of children. In the black and white communities, most specifically, we don't live with large groups of family in our homes, which is a very bad idea, mind you. You need a lot of support when you're a young parent, when you don't make as much money. You need a lot of support in that house that you don't have. So that means if the mother is working, who's most likely watching the children? The father. If my wife's not here, I'm the one watching the kids. And the last time I checked, if you're watching kids, you're not working. So if every man that is like, no, I got this, I'll work a double, I'll get 2 jobs, you're going to run in this day and age into a woman that's going to say, well, my dreams matter too. There are 24 hours in a day. If I work 8, we sleep 8, and you work 8, that shit gone. I can't go work because somebody got to watch these kids, right? Until they get into public school, then maybe I can take another job during the day when they're not there. But you'll find these kind of weird people don't really understand it that way. They're just saying, well, men need to not take their foot off the gas. Trust me, if a man has a woman that's really running it up at work, and he's really running it up, and these people are really trying to build a family, at some point you're going to scratch your head and say, who's investing time into these children? Who's raising them? You got to do something. Exactly. You got to do something with the kids. And most men say, well, damn, if she's just going to be, I want her to have her dreams, but she's not going to take her foot off the gas. I want them to know somebody in their family. Most men are doing that. And here's the worst part about it. Their wife is selling them on the idea. Do not let any woman trick you. These wives are selling their husbands on the idea, well, we have an opportunity here. They're offering me 150 grand. I know it's 80 hours a week, but damn, we can do blank, blank, and blank. What do you think most men are going to say? Well, I mean, I can't argue with that. Fine. I mean, I'm home by such and such. You get home when you get home. I'll take care of it. That's what most husbands are actually doing. They're the secondary caregivers of their children simply because their wife's not there. They have to take their foot off the gas or their children will suffer.
I like it. It works for me.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you Indian or Hispanic and abuelita and abuelo live with you, then yeah, everybody can do what they want to do. The kids are covered. But black and white people, don't nobody live with us. Nobody live with us.
Because we don't want to live with them. We tired of them. We've been
Don't
living our
nobody
whole
live with
lives.
us. That's extremely hard to do.
Go out there and bother somebody else.
Yeah, we got a super chat. Let's do super chat. We got to wrap it up.
Dub Will, $5. Here's the question. If a woman does out earn her man, is she going to allow him to make decisions with the money she earns?
Ooh, good question. Go watch this thing
any
called
other woman would say.
What is it on Netflix?
Hands.
Anybody watch that money thing, How to Get Rich or whatever? Go watch the first episode of that. And that white couple where he works, he used to work, but now he's a stay-at-home dad. Go watch that situation. I guarantee you that's most situations in which the woman makes more money.
You know what's so funny? I think that my mind has kind of changed on this. I think that because I'm not, believe it or not, I'm not really a money motivated person. I just don't want to change classes, but I'm not a money motivated person. So I am an advocate. This came to me and I was like, you know what? That may not be a bad idea. There being a pot. And we just put that money in a pot.
Yep.
And we do things, for everybody out of that pot.
Yep. I
don't have a problem with that. Now, it depends on how I'm getting the money. Okay. So I'm relaxed in getting my money. I like, I make a decent amount of money doing what I do. Now, if I have to work overtime for the money, maybe that is something to consider because you feel like you've sweating tea, you're doing the absolute most for it. But let's just say you have a job that just pays well. You're not doing anything extra. You just have a job that pays well. I don't see how that, for me, I don't have a problem with putting my money in a pot and then it'll be just distributed to whatever it is that needs to.
That's what's supposed to happen. All this separate account shit people are doing, it's gonna ruin your relationship. Today, in today's age, I fully understand now. It took me a long time to understand what people meant when they said their relationship irreconcilable differences. One of the bigger meanings of that is finances, is a large part of that. I used to be like, what finance? What does that mean? It can mean somebody has a gambling problem, somebody's irresponsibly spending, but it also means that people have hidden debt they never told you about. But what I realize is that when it comes in the management of money, what men have been doing irresponsibly with money, we've been doing since the beginning of time. Nobody can create any new scenario that we have not heard of something a man does with his money that's supposed to be for the family. But where a new wave of issues comes in is now that women make money and the outlandish things they're doing to hide some of their money. So this is why if women ever had a question about why men are in charge, it just seems like most things that come from that one pot or everybody can spend what I have, that is more likely coming from a man. As a married man, let me tell you married people stories. I got a few people getting divorced or separated because of some stuff their wife did with money. We got a wife that had a separate job that was remote that she never told him about. Let their house almost get foreclosed on, and the account where she had over $100,000 only came to light during divorce proceedings. Right? So you hit $100,000. He lost his job, and she almost let their house get foreclosed. So you see what I'm saying? Well, and this was her excuse. She said this in front of everybody, by the way. Well, wouldn't you want me and your daughter to be okay in case we divorce? Like you see what I'm saying? That's bad. You should never. There's no way I would ever have any amount of money and let my family suffer, right? Mm-hmm. So, money is a big issue, man.
Well, that's why there used to be a saying back in the day that I don't know if they say it back in the day or they still say it today. That's why they say your money as a man is her money, and her money is her money. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's been like that for quite some time.
I wanted to.
Well, that's the pot. When we put the money in the pot, she takes the pot.
Well, to answer his question, I really do think it depends on, I'm gonna say, generation. Yeah. I would also say culturally, like how you were raised, what was ingrained in you. In general, at this day and age, I definitely think most women will probably be reluctant to allow him to make all the financial decisions if she's making more money and not expect her to have any say-so about how that money is going to be allocated or what, is going to be done. She's definitely going to have some say-so in that. And to be honest, I think if it was the reverse, even if the man was making more money, I still think as a wife, I or she should be able to have some input as well in terms of things that, where money might be spent or things that need to be done or want to do. I think that's part of any relationship, that you do discuss certain things with each other. But if she's making more money, I'm definitely going to say, err on the side to say that she is not going to be as willing. Not to say that she won't do it, but she's definitely going to have some say-so about it. But
yeah, I grew up. You think if she got more money, she got more say?
Absolutely. I think that's the mindset. Like I grew up seeing,
what was the mindset again? What did you
I grew up seeing both of my aunts making more money than their spouses, but their spouses were the ones that made all of the financial decisions, even though they out-earned their husbands. I'm gonna honestly say that I think that generation is gone. You might find, I'll say they're scarce to find. And I would say that I'm even included in that, in terms of, like I said, for me, either way, whether he made more money or I made more money, just both of us are going to have a discussion about where the money is going to go. And I just think that that's
what I've also realized is that whole men make a decision, it's actually very scarce. It doesn't happen as often as we think. I think it's almost common sense that when women started working, and I think men were actually somewhat glad to have the burden relieved off of their shoulders, because it's not really about us having control over money. It's about us still being able to do what we want. And she's being able to do what she wants, and we able to do what we need for the kids, and still save responsibly, spend responsibly, whatever, what have you. I think it's a burden lifted off of a lot of men's shoulders. You're able to get some of the intelligence from a woman who knows how to either invest correctly or something like that. And then in the past, this is something a woman told me. She said something that I think is still true for most women today. The reason why some men take control, which is also a very nerve-wracking experience, is because the woman doesn't want to make any decisions that are detrimental to the family. She can't handle the blame that comes from that. That is something that will always be true, right? So that's what I mean. Like, pressure to do stuff for the family all the time is not control a man is asking for. It's because, oh, well, shit, he could take the blame if he fuck it up. I don't want none of that. Like, that's what I've noticed. That also happens too.
Okay. Thank you for that super chat. That went into a whole little discussion now, didn't it? Okay, you guys, thank you for being here with us tonight. You know, the show is wrapping up, almost 3 hours. And I guarantee it too. Done my part of the deal. All right, thanks you guys for being here with us tonight. Hope to see you next week, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Lapeef JR. Night night.
Good night.